America. Bonjour. Hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt live from the second, as we Americans like to say, aggrandizement. Not really. I am in Paris with Generalissimo himself producing the show from the left bank. Ed Morrissey is in Texas co-hosting with us in the event that the Latin Quarter collapses its internet. Edward, good morning. Good to see you again in Texas.
Good morning, sir. And I'm from the heart of Texas, arrondissement, I think is what we want to say.
We call it the aggrandizement here. That's what we do here. And it's after last night's 4-mile bus ride from the hotel to the restaurant, I'm now convinced that Bill de Blasio is the mayor of Paris. They have filled in the middle of all the streets in Paris and allow bicyclers to roam everywhere wildly. I've never been close to being carsick in my life. I'm 66 years old, but last night the bus in Paris, never get on a bus in Paris. That's what do they say Dennis Farina says in Snatch?
Oh, in Snatch, you know, do you have anything to declare?
Yeah, don't go to England.
Don't go to England.
Okay, so I got this to declare. Don't get on a bus in Paris. That's what I got to declare. Edward, let's do the rundown for people so it's a somewhat normal show. New York Times, U.S. officials are anxiously watching the French presidential election, aware that the outcome on Sunday could scramble President Biden's relation with Europe and reveal dangerous fissures in Western democracy. That's just a bit alarmist. The tour guide told me it's 55-45 Macron. What do you think, Ed?
I think probably true. Now, with the caveat that all politics are local, even in France. But I think Macron has really established himself as a leader in Europe over this Ukraine crisis in a way that Olaf Scholz has not. Boris Johnson has as well. But I think if you're looking at the West, in Europe at least, the two leaders really are Johnson and Macron. And I think even though the French voters might have some issues with Macron, I don't think they change horses in the middle of this particular stream.
I don't either. We're going to come to Boris in a second. Times of Israel from AP, quote, satellite images released yesterday showed what appeared to be mass graves near Mariupol. And local officials accused Russia of burying up to 9,000 Ukrainian civilians there in an effort to conceal the slaughter taking place in the siege of the port city. That's actually one of the most awful headlines I've ever read on the air live, Edward. Do you think they're capable of that?
Russians, absolutely, they're capable of it. I mean, if you've seen what happened in Chechnya 20 years ago, I think you know that this is actually this is a Russian's standard operational procedure. The way that they've conducted war in Syria is exactly the same way. This is who the Russians are, and I think that we have really lost sight over the last 30 years of Russian elite leadership and what it is and what their history is. The post-Soviet era is really still just Russian imperialism in a different flavor. Now that they have resources to pursue it, they're pursuing it. And I think that people just really lost the thread of this.
I believe the world will have to be. I couldn't buy a barrel of gas anywhere or a barrel of oil from Russia anywhere if this turns out to be true. It's already that way to me. I just think it's so disgusting that.
I agree, but here's the thing. I mean, we're buying stuff from China, and they're committing an outright genocide in Xinjiang. I mean,
right. But we don't see it. The difference is Americans don't see it. And if you don't see it, it doesn't happen in America. Financial Times, Elon Musk has unveiled a $46.5 billion financing package to fund his takeover bid for Twitter as he pushes forward with the deal. Do you think this is coming off, or is this Elon Musk just generating Elon Musk headlines?
No. I think the fact that he's lining up financing with Morgan Stanley says he's extremely serious about this. I think the board was hoping that he was just being, Musk being Musk and doing things for a few headlines. If you're lining up $25 billion, $26 billion of financing with Morgan Stanley, you're serious about this. He's putting his Tesla stock up as collateral on this.
It's amazing. Also from the Financial Times, Jay Powell has sent his strongest signal yet that the Federal Reserve is preparing to raise interest rates by a 0.5 percentage point at least at its next meeting. I believe that's foregone. It's baked into the cake. I don't think it'll bother the markets. What do you think, Edward Morrissey?
Same thing, and I think that they're expecting a lot more than that. The monetary supply here has been way too loose for way too long, and they're going to try to tighten it up right now. The problem is that Federal Reserve is really the only game in town because Congress will not adopt fiscal discipline. They will not stop spending money, and that forces monetary expansions all on its own. So the Fed is the only game in town, and they're going to have to start playing.
All right, The Telegraph, the great paper of Great Britain. Boris Johnson put his political future in the hands of a star chamber of MPs. For the benefit of the Steelers fans, that means a secret proceeding. As he insisted he had nothing to hide, the Prime Minister on Tuesday forced to accept a parliamentary investigation into whether he had lied to the Commons. Now, in the United States, people lie all the time on the floor of the House of Representatives and the Senate,
Right.
and there is no rebuke. But if you're a minister and you lie to the House, it's considered you got to quit. What do you think, Edward? What's your odds on Boris surviving? For a while there, I thought he was invincible.
I mean, my first thing is what's it called when a president misleads Congress in the United States? It's called Wednesday.
Yeah.
But the prime minister is appointed by Parliament and is responsible to Parliament in a way that's not true in the United States. And so, yes, I mean, there's a reason for that. Again, I think it would be difficult to change horses in the middle of this Ukraine crisis, especially with Boris Johnson performing so well in it. But I also think that their tradition dictates that if you're getting your power from Parliament and you try to mislead Parliament, you're pretty much gone, and that's a fairly reliable outcome in those cases. I suspect
if they lose this red wall by-election that's coming up, an election in a seat that went from Liberal to Tory in the north of England, they have a red wall by-election because one of the Tories turned out to be a child molester, I think. I think that was what the charge was. Every other Tory is going to they're going to go full Julius Caesar with Brutus as his best friend on the way to the forum on Boris Johnson because they don't want to get wiped out. A moment of silence, please, Ed. I know this hurts a great deal. Wall Street Journal. CNN is shutting its streaming service, CNN Plus, after a month. $300 million in startup costs, between $100 and $200 million in promotion, 110,000 subscribers, and they just did the new Coke thing. We'd have a new Coke. It's called CNN Plus. It's a shorthand for every kind of fiasco you could possibly imagine. And I put my whole view. There are bad takes. There are good takes on this. Here's my take, Ed. No one's going to pay for slow news. And everything is slow compared to print. If you want news, you go to, I've got 10 subscriptions to newspapers, magazines, because I can read them as fast as we're doing. And we're fast. We're doing like 10 stories in 10 minutes. It could never have worked. It's not the talent. It just could not work.
No, it's a bad idea. It's just a completely unworkable idea. And if you want the hard news, you actually tune into CNN, which if you're a cable subscriber, you've already got. So why are you paying for soft news from CNN that is really basically you're paying for content that's not interesting enough to go on CNN's air. This model made no sense.
The original blue bubble. It's the original blue bubble. They talked to each other into doing this. Florida lawmakers from the Wall Street Journal gave final approval to a bill that would end a special tax district that allows Walt Disney to govern land housing its theme parks. Okay, I got a call from a friend, a text. Are you in favor of the Don't Say Gay bill? And I wrote back and said, well, it's probably unconstitutional on a content viewpoint neutrality basis. But if Disney wants to get in the boxing ring with state government, expect to get punched. What do you think, Ed? A, on the constitutionality and whether or not you would have voted for it if you're in the Florida legislature?
The constitutionality of the rescission of the special districts?
No, of the Don't Say Gay law, which isn't a Don't Say Gay law. It's just not.
It's not a Don't Say Gay law. This is a bill that sets standards for school curricula on sex education. That's not unconstitutional. I mean, this is part of the state and local school board authority.
It will be unconstitutional. It will be unconstitutional if they say it's okay to teach this curriculum about sex ed, but not this curriculum about sex ed. But by banning all of the curriculum, it's content new. I haven't read the law. Have you read the law?
Yes, I've read the law. It was a while back. It was when they first put it up for a vote. I read the law, and the issue is that you can't talk about you can't talk about gender ideology. You can't talk about sexual orientation in sex education classes from K to 3. After that, it has to be age appropriate. So it isn't actually this curriculum's okay, that curriculum is not. It's just that those topics are not to be discussed between K and 3.
Well, that is content neutral and viewpoint neutral, so it will be constituted. I just haven't read it, but I said if Disney gets in the ring and they get punched in the face. We have 1 minute, 2 more stories. 4 days after Philly became the first American city to reinstate the mask mate, it's been revoked. And in the New York Times, the outcome in New York will have significant implications. They lost a redistricting case yesterday. New York State's Intermediate Appeals Court struck down their redistricting map. I am perfectly confident the New York highest court is going to put it back. But I also am so glad that Philly screwed up the mask mandate so that everyone can say, what do you got to declare? Don't go to Philadelphia.
Yeah, I think what really, I wrote about this morning. I think what really killed it was John Fetterman saying that he was against it right before they went into that debate. And I think that the Philadelphia said, this must be pretty darned unpopular.
Ed Morrissey is with me from Texas. I and radio blogger are in Paris. We're not wearing berets. We're not using the bad French accent because we're not punch drunk from jet lag today. And we will be right back after the break on the Friday edition of The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of The Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
It has to be accompanied by zinc hydroxychloroquine. Why didn't they rapidly have clinical trials on that? Would therapeutics be better than vaccinations? Atlas said we need accountability on the people in pharma who didn't show fully the data. We don't have the full set of data from the CDC on complications from the vaccines. Why not? We've had hundreds of millions of doses of these vaccines administered. We don't have a full set of data on the complications yet. Why? What kind of scientific process is that?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Judge Thomas, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on Wilkow.
And here's my serious question. You could ask this perhaps of friends, family members, or coworkers. If you're against this bill that simply sets age appropriateness between kindergarten and third grade, all of these people in Hollywood are for abortion. How would you explain an abortion to a 5-year-old? Would you show them medically accurate images? Would you show them a video? Would you explain in perfect medical, scientific only, clinical language what an abortion is? No, you wouldn't. Well, why not? You certainly could to a 17, 18-year-old, a senior in high school who's graduating. Why wouldn't you explain it the exact same way to a 5-year-old? I can't hear you. Because that's not, say it with me, age appropriate. So that means that when we're talking about war or violence, death and destruction, medical issues, sexual orientation and transgender issues, there are some things that we don't need to explicitly explain to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or even a 7-year-old. You get them in 4th grade. Is that not good enough? And the other side of this is, why don't you just tell us why you're so obsessed with explaining sexual orientation, sex, and transgenderism to a 5-year-old?
Keep up with what's trending. Watch Wilkow at 5 p.m. Eastern on Salem News Channel. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
These are clowns who are desperate to prop Joe Biden up. And every last one of the rhinos who did it, the Never Trumpers and the Jen Rubins of the world, they're just flailing, pitiful people who bet on the wrong horse. They're on the wrong side of history, and they are certainly wrong for trying to elevate this guy beyond what he is, which is a blundering, doddering, incompetent, old man who should not be in the Oval Office. And that's what we're up against right now. We have a chance to fix these things, and it starts on November the 8th. Beware of rhinos who are propping up either Democrats or fellow rhinos.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
I may go down and busk a little bit on the shelf today. Hugh Hewitt from Paris. So great to have you. Ed Morrison joining me from Texas, and blogger in the French capital, Weekdays. I want to remind everyone today is the last day, the very last day I'm going to appeal for you to send aid to Ukraine for the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. The International Fellowship has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars from this and other audiences on the Salem Radio Network. They've sponsored this campaign. You've been very, very generous. I want to thank you for that. I also want to play Yael Eckstein, the president of the fellowship, talking about why your help is so urgently needed. Or not. Maybe we don't have that tape. I guess we don't have that tape. The phone number is hold on. Yeah.
Fellowship of Christians and Jews is on the ground in Ukraine right now, responding to this devastating crisis. The fellowship has been working here on the ground in Ukraine with our trusted partners for over 30 years.
The distribution centers and volunteers are standing by. We need your help now.
Now, 800-980-2070. 800-980-2070. If you want to help Ukrainians get relief supplies from Israel, if you want to help Ukrainian Jews make Aliyah to Israel, 800-980-2070. Or go to HughHewitt.com and go to the very top and see the banner up there at the top. And we do appreciate all of you who have helped make this life-saving exodus from Ukraine possible. Let me check markets, brought to you by our sponsor, Birch Gold. Now, Birch Gold will help you buy gold. They will help you roll over a portion of your IRA or SEP IRA into it. And after yesterday's market, I got to tell you, it's the strangest market yesterday. Everything was down. The Dow, the S&P, the NASDAQ by 1%, 1.5%, and 2% respectively. In Europe this morning, everything is red, 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 red. England, Germany, France. I think France is afraid that they actually would elect Marine Le Pen, though I don't think that's going to happen. Even gold fell to $19.44 an ounce, but it's still relatively inexpensive to other assets that are declining in price. The 10-year Treasury is up to 2.917%, and that means it's just going to be almost impossible to buy real estate very shortly if you're a young person, so don't sleep on it. But Ed Morrissey, Birch Gold, our great sponsor, go to HughGold.com or text my name, Hugh, to 989898. All that news yesterday was terrible on the economic front.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and the Russian war is bad for economics. It just is. And so you've got that going on, too. There's going to be food shortages and fertilizer shortages. That's bad for economic news, although it's usually good for precious metals, right? So if you were
right, it's been good for gold until yesterday, but even gold fell down yesterday.
Yeah, but I think
so head over
probably just a course correction, though.
It might be. Head over to Birch Gold via HughGold.com, or text my name, Hugh, to 989898. I want to play for you a little of President Biden because it just doesn't get any better than this. Whenever he does any kind of speaking, I really don't have to do any show prep, though we have Secretary of State Mike Pompeo coming up. This goes back a little bit, but I want to play it for you. Cut number 7.
I was with Xi Jinping. I've traveled with 17,000 miles and have spent more time with any other world leader over a total of, I think, and we're up to 90-some hours of talking or meeting together over the last 6-7 years. And we're in the foothills of the Tibet.
Foothills of the Tibet, Ed. What do you think?
Foothills of the Tibet.
Yeah, of the Tibet. Generalissimo is walking me around Paris, and whenever anyone engages me, he pretends he's the Easter Bunny, and he says, "Come along, Joe," and he moves me along.
That's actually kind of funny.
It's a bad joke, and it gets funnier every time he does it, but it's funny. We're on a listener cruise, and we got dozens of listeners. He said, "Come on, Joe," and he just moves me along.
Does he hold his arms up like this and wave his hands around? Yeah, it's
Yes, and everybody else on tour knows that. Okay, let's get.
Hugh's tired. Get him back to the hotel room.
Let's get.
He's got jet lag. But one other bit of Joe yesterday from the 2 days ago. Cut number 1, please.
What does Putin claiming control over Mariupol mean? How significant is that?
Well, first of all, it's questionable whether he does control Mariupol. One thing for sure we know about Mariupol. He should allow humanitarian corridors to let people on that steel mill and other places that are buried under rubble to get out.
Yeah,
that's what
questionable. I had to have known about the mass grave when Steve asked him that. Steve Holland, my friend, asked him that question. It wasn't in the press room. They brought him into the Oval to get him out earlier. More coming up. Sonny Bunch joins Ed Morris and me after the break. Don't go anywhere, everyone. Sonny Bunch, official movie critic of the Hugh Hewitt Show, has to answer to the Fetching Mr. Hewitt for Everything Everywhere All at Once. His recommendation, which she did not care for. Stay tuned.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
What does Putin claiming control over Mariupol mean? How significant is that?
Well, first of all, it's questionable whether he does control Mariupol. One thing for sure we know about Mariupol. He should allow humanitarian corridors to let people on that steel mill and other places that are buried under rubble. Now, what I'm considering is continuing to hear from well, first of all, there's going to be an appeal.
Streaming on Salem Now.
As Galileans, we witnessed his first miracle. He warned us that a time of great deception would come. But we must hold on to our faith. That one day he would return to save us from the end of the world.
What if there was evidence that proves that this is all real? Because there were so many people bringing up little bits and pieces of this. I'm thinking, there's got to be a pattern here. This discovery proves that he is coming back. This is the most profound discovery in human history.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
He takes money that the U.S. gives, and when he doesn't split it with the Bidens, he puts it in his own bank account. So, yeah, I feel bad for the Ukrainian people, but no. I mean, what are we going to do? Just go to the Federal Reserve and fire up the old money machine printer?
You know, I tend to agree with him. On the other hand, it's hard not to see the utter devastation, humanity, and the strength, the bravery of these Ukrainian people who are standing up to Russia's atrocities. I told you this a couple weeks ago. A Ukrainian that I met in Florida, guy told me, he said, listen, Americans don't really quite fully get Zelensky. Zelensky is not exactly Mother Teresa. That came from a Ukrainian.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
You called your son, and you personally promised him you would be here.
Prayer is a powerful thing, Ethan. It really does work, if you believe.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Stressed? But now she's got this to deal with because that's the point. It's how cruel they are. That's how vicious and mean-spirited and cruel the Adam Kinzingers and the Liz Cheneys and the Bob Woodwards of the world are. They're a vicious, vicious bunch. Let me give you another example in reminding you of why you're on the right side during these extraordinary times. I don't know who Dana Gould is. Never heard of him. He's got a podcast of some kind, and he's a comic. But he sent out a tweet that went viral for all the wrong reasons. His tweet said, and I quote, "Thinking about Rush Limbaugh and how, now that he's dead, you never, ever hear about him. No one mentions anything he did, because what he did had no value. It contributed nothing worthwhile to the culture, nothing of lasting value." Again, with all due respect to Dana Gould, who I've never heard from, I'm not sure what you've contributed to society. I don't know how many millions and millions of dollars you've directed to charities and the philanthropic works that Limbaugh did during his too brief a time on this planet. But I'm going to go out on a limb and think that you don't even have a fingernail worth of merit in terms of contributions to society compared to the late Rush Limbaugh. But again, it's the cruelty, it's the viciousness of the left that matters. That's what stands out. They are a vicious, vicious.
Welcome back, America. Say goodbye to Hollywood, even on streaming platforms. I'm Hugh Hewitt from Paris with Radio Blogger. Along with me, Ed Morrissey is in Texas, and we're joined by the official film critic of the Hugh Hewitt Show, Sonny Bunch. Hello, Sonny. How are you?
I'm good, Hugh. How are you?
Well, you're in the doghouse with the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt for Everything Everywhere All at Once, but that's not what we're going to talk about. That's when I get back into the country. I got to ask you what you think of the Netflix implosion. The CNN Plus implosion I understand completely, but the Netflix dropping by whatever it dropped, what did you make of that, Sonny?
Yeah, CNN Plus is interesting because I was never entirely sure who the audience for CNN Plus was. CNN Plus, if they had offered the actual streaming version of CNN, that would be more valuable than the kind of series of soft, newsy, personality-driven stuff that they were offering. I just didn't get it. So the fall of CNN Plus was not a huge shock to me, and I feel bad because I like people at CNN. I've got friends there. That's unfortunate, but whatever. Netflix is another interesting case. So Netflix, if folks don't know, Netflix, the stock dropped, I think a quarter of its value over the last week. They shed subscribers for the first time in a decade or so. They lost subscribers. Which is not what you want to be doing if your stock is, valued essentially on being the last service standing, because that's what Wall Street has kind of predicted for Netflix since the rise of streaming and the move to a post-cable future. There were some folks who thought, well, Netflix is going to be there's only going to be one service. It's going to be Netflix. Now, this was always kind of foolish. That never made much sense to me. But the thing about Netflix is that unlike some of these big tech companies and unlike some of these, big entertainment companies, it made tons and tons of money. It makes tons and tons of money. I mean, it actually generates a great, enormous amount of revenue because it still has 200 million subscribers, right? It generates something like $18 billion a year in revenue just from their subscription service. That's a lot of money. That's more than the domestic box office back before COVID, right? That's more than the entire domestic U.S. box office. So, Netflix is a weird case in that they were overvalued despite the fact that they actually still earned a ton of money. Now, what happens to the company from here is really kind of up in the air because Netflix has some structural problems. Netflix's biggest problem was its initial selling point, right? The initial selling point of Netflix streaming was, hey, we're doing the binge model. You get Netflix and you get a season of House of Cards and it comes out in one weekend and the whole week, it's all there. The whole season is there. You watch it all. You watch the whole season of Stranger Things in a weekend, right? And that was an actual legitimate innovation. It changed how people watch TV. It changed kind of what they expected. There are still folks who get frustrated with week-to-week rollouts on some of the other streaming platforms like Disney+. But it's a bad model. It's a bad model because it's extremely expensive. On the one hand, you have to put out tons and tons more content. If you're doing a whole season of television a week and you're putting out, essentially a new season every 2 weeks, that's a problem. You just can't keep that sort of pace up. But worse than that, I think, is the way it kills buzz so quickly. So, people talk about Netflix shows for a week, and then they move on to the next thing because everybody who really wants to watch it all watches it all. And then, everybody else is kind of falling behind and they don't talk about it as much. It's just a bad model.
And you walk around not wanting to do a spoiler, Ed?
Right. And Sonny, hi, this is Ed Morrissey. Great to talk with you. I was struck by the fact that Netflix is actually one of the better quality original programming platforms too. And so they do have quite a bit of really good original content. Amazon has some. But about the model that you're talking about, I'm a subscriber to Discovery Plus because I'm hooked on HGTV. I mean, it's just I'm an addict, and they are very much the opposite. It's a 1 week, one show a week rollout. Even if you're a paid subscriber, you get about 24-hour early view of whatever the latest episode is of your favorite shows. And to me, that does make a lot more sense. Is Netflix going to restructure in that way? And the second question I have for you is, will this loss of capital impact their ability to create new and original programming?
Well, so to answer the first part first, I think that they are already starting to move away from this model a little bit. If you look at what is happening with the last season of Ozark, for instance, so the next season of Ozark, their hit show is the last season, and they're rolling it out in 2 parts. There's part 1 is coming 1 month, part 2 is coming the next month. That they're doing that on purpose to force folks to stick around for 2 months, right? Instead of just signing up for 1 month and then dropping it once they're done binging the new season of Ozark. And they're doing the same thing with the new season of Stranger Things. New season of Stranger Things is coming in 2 parts. So I think they are coming to terms with the fact that the binging model is not necessarily the best way to go about it, at least from a business point of view. Because again, what happens is, people sign up when there's a show that they want to watch, and they sign up for a month, and then they drop the service. This is what we call churn in the industry, and it is, it's a problem for all streaming services. But I think it's a particular problem for Netflix in the sense that, again, they make it very easy to sign up for a month and then get rid of it for 3 or 4 months until you're ready for the next thing. In terms of will they be able to keep making the original content, I mean, the fascinating thing about Netflix, again, it's a company that it generates a ton of money, 18, 20, 21 billion dollars, some enormous amount of money. And they are still spending more than that because they are creating so much content, because it's not just American shows, right? They're making shows in every country where they are. This is why you get something like Squid Game, right? Squid Game is a Korean show. It was relatively cheap to make. I think it cost like $20 million to produce or something like that. It became an enormous worldwide hit. That is Netflix's holy grail. They want that sort of show, the show that costs $20 million to make, that gets watched in every territory, by tons and tons of people. The problem is that those shows are very few and far between. American audiences don't like subtitled programs, and America is still the largest audience. So they have a problem. And again, all of this original content was funded on essentially venture capital. People were pouring money into Netflix. They were accumulating debt at a huge, enormous, massive rate. And they're not going to be able to keep doing that, I don't think, if their market cap is. I mean, I was looking at the stock today. Their value has declined by something like 60% over the last year. It's crazy. They've lost an enormous amount of market capitalization. And so the big criticism, right, is, well, Netflix should have, when it had the market cap, Netflix should have bought MGM, or Netflix should have tried to buy Sony, because I think Sony is still kind of quietly on the market right now, Sony Pictures, or Lionsgate. They should have bought somebody with a big library that has some IP that they can use to bolster the Netflix stable, and they didn't do that, and now they're not going to be able to do that. So they're going to. So
Sonny, I've got to ask you a quick question. Get a quick review from you as well. And make a comment. My comment is that they're going to figure out that all these streaming services have got to start streaming people like Victor Davis Hanson doing his podcast, because there are audiences for that, and he only does 2 a week. Number two. If you were going to have one streaming service, Sonny Bunch was going to have one streaming service, which one would it be? And then, since I see Nicolas Cage movie in French all over the French buses, what do you think of that movie? Go ahead, Sonny. We got like 2 minutes.
If I could only have one streaming service, it would be HBO Max. HBO Max has the deepest library and the best originals. Ed mentioned that Netflix has lots of originals. They do have lots of originals. They make a ton of original shows. The problem is none of them are really must-watch for me. I mean, right now I'm watching on HBO Max. I'm watching Winning Time and Tokyo Vice, two new shows. But there are probably half a dozen other HBO Max originals that I've watched and enjoyed. I can't remember the last time I watched a Netflix original series.
I thought you were going to say Amazon, because Amazon also lets you buy stuff. So Amazon's got a second reason to subscribe.
Well, Prime Video, Prime Video has a big advantage in that it gives you access to more movies because it lets you subscribe to things. I mean, it's really more of Amazon Prime Video is really more of a traditional VOD pay-per-view service, right? That's how I like to think of Amazon Prime, and they do have some good originals. I mean, I can't remember if we talked about it, but they've got a new one with Chris Pine called All the Old Knives.
I've seen it. I haven't watched it yet. I did like, Jack Ryan's over there, so I watched Jack Ryan. We got a minute, Sonny. Nicolas Cage.
So I actually haven't seen The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent yet. I hear good things. It's 90% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. People seem very excited about it. But the premise here is Nicolas Cage plays an actor called Nick Cage, who is essentially broke, just like the real Nick Cage, and he was offered $1 million to come hang out with a international criminal played by Pedro Pascal. It becomes sort of a buddy comedy and also a meta comedy about Nicolas Cage and the state of his career and how that is all going. Again, I didn't see. I actually saw The Northman, the new Viking.
Oh, you got 30 seconds. What do you think about The Northman?
Well, The Northman is basically Conan the Barbarian, but an art house version of that, set in Norway in the, I think it's 970 AD, something like that. It's very, very violent. It's a little bit weird. Again, it is kind of an art housey type movie. Lots of visions and nightmares and terrors and that sort of thing. Hugh, I don't know if you're going to like it. It's very, very violent, very, very bloody. So
I do like swords.
Word of warning.
I like swords and axes, and I watched The Last Kingdom and all that stuff. I like Bernard Cornwell. Ed, are you going to watch that one, The Northman?
I think so. It's up my alley, absolutely.
It's got swords, right?
It's got swords.
Sword movie.
What else can you say?
Yeah. Sonny Bunch, you can get his podcast, Sonny, across the movie aisle, and the Bulwark goes to the movie. Sonny Bunch, thank you. Follow him on Twitter at Sonny Bunch. Follow me to relieffactor.com, which I really need because my neck is killing me. I was in the at the dinner last night with a doctor and a financial guy, and he said, "Do you really use Relief Factor?" Yeah, absolutely, I do, but I'm missing it because my neck is killing me, and it's I think French pillows are not made for Hugh necks. But in any event, I forgot my relieffactor.com, and so I say to all of you out there, don't forget your relieffactor.com when you go on vacation. Don't forget it when you get in your car. Relieffactor.com, $19.95 gets you the 3-week starter pack. Try it for yourself. See, we had quite a debate on the among the Hugh Cruise listeners as to whether or not Relief Factor was for them, and I think it was about 70%, which is the re-up rate. Don't go anywhere, America. Who's next? Tom Weiler? I think so, from Minnesota, the next congressman from Minnesota's 3rd Congressional District. Stay tuned, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Brought to you in part by Stamps.com.
Sonny couldn't.
Trending now on Wilkow.
And here's my serious question. You could ask this perhaps of friends, family members, or coworkers. If you're against this bill that simply sets age appropriateness between kindergarten and 3rd grade, all of these people in Hollywood are for abortion. How would you explain an abortion to a 5-year-old? Would you show them medically accurate images? Would you show them a video? Would you explain in perfect medical, scientific only, clinical language what an abortion is? No, you wouldn't. Well, why not? You certainly could to a 17, 18-year-old, a senior in high school who's graduating. Why wouldn't you explain it the exact same way to a 5-year-old? I can't hear you. Because that's not, say it with me, age appropriate. So that means that when we're talking about war or violence, death and destruction, medical issues, sexual orientation and transgender issues, there are some things that we don't need to explicitly explain to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or even a 7-year-old. You get them in 4th grade. Is that not good enough? And the other side of this is, why don't you just tell us why you're so obsessed with explaining sexual orientation, sex, and transgenderism to a 5-year-old?
Keep up with what's trending. Watch Wilkow at 5 p.m. Eastern on Salem News Channel.
Streaming on Salem Now.
This is a story of how 1 million children were placed with local foster families through an unlikely alliance between the Chinese government and a British footballer. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans. With unprecedented access across the country, this is a unique insight into the lives of the 90s orphans now driving the 21st century's fastest growing economy.
This story needs to be told across the world. At a time where there's so much negativity and cynicism, here's proof that a single leap of faith can change the world.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, live in Paris with Generalissimo Ed Morrissey standing by in Texas. But I am joined by Tom Weiler, and if I was in Minnesota tomorrow, I would second the nomination of Tom Weiler to be the next congressman from the 3rd Congressional District. And if I can do it from Paris, here it is. I second the nomination of Tom Weiler. He was my neighbor in Virginia when he was serving in the submarine service in the Pentagon. I got to know him very well. He's a great American. He is now retired from the Navy, and he is going to be a great congressman. Tom, welcome. Good luck tomorrow in the Minnesota State Convention. And you Minnesota conventioneers, nominate Tom because we got to win that 3rd Congressional District. How's it look, Tom?
It looks very well, Hugh. And first off, good morning to you and good morning to all your listeners. And thank you very much for the second. I really appreciate it.
Well, tell me how it works. Most of us who don't live in Minnesota don't have any idea what the process is like. Ed was briefing me on it at the beginning, and it sounds incoherent and crazy to me. But I love everyone in the room. They come to all my events when I'm in Minnesota. So I love you. Make sure you nominate Tom Weiler.
Well, sir, first off, it will be 70 degrees here tomorrow, so it's not so cold tomorrow. This is our first 70-degree day, though, of the spring. But, yeah, how the convention works is there's been about 250 delegates who first went to a caucus night on February 1st, then were elected by their peers, basically, at a BPOU convention. So that's a basic political organizing unit, of course. And those delegates have moved on now to the 3rd Congressional District Republican Convention. And I hope to get 60% of their votes or more, and that will be the official endorsement of the Minnesota GOP to support my campaign to defeat Congressman Dean Phillips on November 8th.
Now, I'm very excited about this because I think the 3rd District is going to be competitive, and I know a submariner is needed in the Congress. We need someone who actually knows Virginia class, Ohio class, and the future Columbia class. Is that going over well? Is that message that national security matters to Minnesotians working?
Absolutely. I think there's a clear differentiation between myself, serving 20 years in the submarine force, and some unique experiences both at the Pentagon, like you said, working in offices that help fund and determine the requirements and resourcing for the submarine force, as well as the experience I had working as a legislative defense fellow on Capitol Hill, and my overall knowledge of foreign policy operating against Chinese and Russian forces for the last 20 years, and that differentiates very well with Congressman Dean Phillips, who's been in Congress for 4 years now, has voted 100% with Speaker Pelosi in the last session, and doesn't really have any foreign policy or international experience.
Tom, do the folks in your district get, now Minnesota voters are pretty smart, so I suspect that they get this, that the future of deterrence depends upon our underwater capacity. I don't think we have a submariner in Congress, and we certainly don't have anyone who recently retired after 20-plus years, both on boomers and attack subs. I just don't think we've got the necessary, we got great Republicans like Mike Gallagher from Wisconsin, Tom Cotton in the Senate. We got a lot of people with military experience. I just don't think we have anyone from the Silent Service.
I think you're correct on that, Hugh. And yeah, I do think the future of both strategic deterrence and the future in the Western Pacific as well, specifically any China-Taiwan scenario, submarines are a huge factor in that. And obviously PACOM commanders for the past decade or so have made the point, regardless of if they're aviators, surface warriors, or submariners, that buying a new Virginia class is about the best investment the Department of Defense can make to make us more secure against Russia, China, and all of our foes in the future.
Now, Tom, when I go up to Minnesota, people still want to talk about farm policy. They still want to talk about the Minnesota State Fair, and they still want to talk about crime in Minneapolis and in probably your district. What has dominated the campaigning thus far, and which I'm sure will be on the minds of everyone at the state convention?
Absolutely. It is clearly public safety still. Unfortunately, Minnesota became an epicenter of the defund the police movement with the riots of 2020. And that was really a motivating factor for me to get into the race. If my diagnosis with Parkinson's prematurely into my submarine career. And so I came back inspired to hopefully provide more conservative leadership to D.C. and to represent the folks in the 3rd District in a more positive, conservative manner than Congressman Dean Phillips. And, yeah, so it's definitely public safety. And then that 8% inflation, that hits every Minnesotan just like it hits every American right in the face every morning when they're putting food on the table and filling up their gas tanks to go to work. And then the third issue really is education. And both crime and education clearly don't need to be solved from D.C. Those are much better solved at the local level, but there's still an element of support and making sure states and localities have the proper resources, and that's what I hope to do as a congressman.
You know, this is Ed Morrissey, and I'm a recent departee of Minnesota. I know the third district pretty well, and I'm curious as to how much impact the outward migration from the Minneapolis and St. Paul core into the 3rd district is going to play in the election here. What the impact of that is going to be.
30 seconds, Tom Weiler. 30 seconds.
Yes, sir. Yeah, there's been a shift in the demographic shift in the 3rd district, but it's somewhat slight, honestly. The districts were redrawn as well. So really overall, this has been a conservative district for about 30 of the last 34 years, and those conservative roots still run very deep in Minnesota's 3rd. So I think
good luck in the convention tomorrow. Good luck in the convention tomorrow, Tom Weiler. I'm proud to second your nomination. I hope you get many other seconds to your nomination. I hope you get nominated, and I hope you go forward to the Congress, and I'll see you back in D.C. when you win. Go nowhere, America. As former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo joins Ed Morrissey and I in Hour 2 of today's Friday edition of the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Fiance? No, I can't be your fiance.
You're gonna go. You're gonna be my fiance, and you're gonna be the most amazing, fascinating, most successful man ever. We're only gonna be there for a few hours, eat dinner, and I promise we'll have the best breakup of all time.
My baby, my princess. Oh, yeah.
Beat a little bit. Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Stressed? But now she's got this to deal with because that's the point. It's how cruel they are. That's how vicious and mean-spirited and cruel the Adam Kinzingers and the Liz Cheneys and the Bob Woodwards of the world are. They're a vicious, vicious bunch. Let me give you another example in reminding you of why you're on the right side during these extraordinary times. I don't know who Dana Gould is. Never heard of him. He's got a podcast of some kind, and he's a comic. But he sent out a tweet that went viral for all the wrong reasons. His tweet said, and I quote, "Thinking about Rush Limbaugh and how, now that he's dead, you never, ever hear about him. No one mentions anything he did, because what he did had no value. It contributed nothing worthwhile to the culture, nothing of lasting value." Again, with all due respect to Dana Gould, who I've never heard from, I'm not sure what you've contributed to society. I don't know how many millions and millions of dollars you've directed to charities and the philanthropic works that Limbaugh did during his too brief a time on this planet. But I'm going to go out on a limb and think that you don't even have a fingernail worth of merit in terms of contributions to society compared to the late Rush Limbaugh. But again, it's the cruelty, it's the viciousness of the left that matters. That's what stands out. They are a vicious, vicious bunch.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
They're racist, racist, racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
Award-winning filmmakers Stephen Barber and Matthew Housley, along with producer Tamara Henry, bring you the world's most dangerous paper route. Never-before-seen images from legendary Stars and Stripes military newspaper.
In a way, the hometown newspaper of the U.S. military.
Well, everybody read it. In the field, in particular, people were hungry for it. And there were no punches pulled. We knew what was going on in the state.
Don't worry about the bullet with your name on it. Worry about those flying around that say to whom it may concern.
I had a choice between going to Armed Forces Network or 2 Stars and Stripes, and I pick Stars and Stripes.
Join Vanilla Fire Productions as they head downrange to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Kuwait to follow the world's most dangerous paper route.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
The only time you can come to Christ when the Spirit of God comes.
You ever thought of going to seminary?
Billy Graham.
Gloria a Dios, hermanos. Y él está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
If I were to pick the most consequential conservative of the modern era, it would be Roger Ailes.
So is he the pit bull of American politics?
When Roger Ailes is on your team, you win.
Go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
These are clowns who are desperate to prop Joe Biden up. And every last one of the rhinos who did it, the Never Trumpers and the Jen Rubins of the world, they're just flailing, pitiful people who bet on the wrong horse. They're on the wrong side of history, and they are certainly wrong for trying to elevate this guy beyond what he is, which is a blundering, doddering, incompetent old man who should not be in the Oval Office. And that's what we're up against right now. We have a chance to fix these things, and it starts on November the 8th. Beware of rhinos who are propping up either Democrats or fellow rhinos.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
When you look at what SpaceX has done with their reusable rockets, we are seeing science fiction of the 1950s coming to life. Rockets land as they always were meant to do.
It's really trying to land on a postage stamp.
Elon Musk is a visionary, someone who comes along perhaps once a century. It's one thing to run a company that's worth $1 billion. Elon Musk has 4.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Days of the week, he drank beer. In high school, a United States Senator wasting everybody's time. Think what the Washington Post would be saying if somebody said to Ketanji Brown Jackson, how many days a week did you drink beer in high school, huh? Did you smoke pot in high school? What days of the week? It makes your blood boil. But they're clowns. These aren't serious people. Cory Booker is a joke. He's a joke. These Democrats who grandstand and who pretend to be moral arbiters are fools.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
It has to be accompanied by zinc hydroxychloroquine. Why didn't they rapidly have clinical trials on that? Would therapeutics be better than vaccinations? Atlas said we need accountability on the people in pharma who didn't show fully the data. We don't have the full set of data from the CDC on complications from the vaccines. Why not? We've had hundreds of millions of doses of these vaccines administered. We don't have a full set of data on the complications yet. Why? What kind of scientific process is that?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi. Canada, Hugh Hewitt, live from Paris, where Radio Blogger is. I'm joined also by Ed Morrissey, who is in Texas, making sure that if the Latin Quarter's internet goes down, we are not stranded. And I'm joined by my old friend, former Oklahoma Attorney General, former Director Administrator of the United States Environmental Protection Agency, and now candidate for the retiring Jim Inhofe's Senate seat, Scott Pruitt. Scott, welcome back, General. It's great to have you back on the show.
Bonjour, and I'm sure Ed's in a far better place in Texas, right?
He is. He's in a far better place. But I think it's interesting that I'm talking to you from Paris because you are responsible for getting us out of the Paris Accord. You helped President Trump get the United States out of the Paris Accord. Would you count that as your greatest achievement as head of EPA?
I believe so. Look, I mean, we tackled, Hugh, some of the most challenging issues the first 2 years of the Trump administration. I was President Trump's point person. I was his guy to get things done on some of the most transformative issues in the administration the first 2 years. And I think that, from exiting the Paris Accord to, ending the weaponization against all forms of producers in the U.S. economy, from agriculture to manufacturing to most acutely the energy sector. So, yeah, I think exiting the Paris Accord, Hugh, was a tremendously important decision to the world. It was something that said that we weren't going to be taken advantage of. We were leading the world in carbon reduction when we entered the Paris Accord. We were front-loading costs while China and India, took no obligations until the year 2030. At the same time they were, committing to the Paris Accord, China and India, they were building infrastructure, fossil fuel infrastructure. So it was clear that the rest of the world looked at that decision by the Obama administration to enter the Paris Accord as, economically disadvantageous to the U.S. and economically advantageous to the rest of the world. And that's the reason they applauded it. And it had nothing to do with carbon reduction. So, the president made the right decision. It was a historical time for me to be with him in the Rose Garden to announce that to the world. And it was just one aspect of changing the direction of an agency that was, obviously a bastion of the American left, used as a tool and a weapon against all forms of producers in the U.S., to turn it from that to a place that was about stewardship and about respecting, our partners in the marketplace to achieve, good outcomes for the environment while also producing needed energy for the world, was a tremendously important time.
Scott Pruitt, when you were at EPA, you did so many things. You took a lot of bullets for the president in terms of going after the 404 regulation to allow people to use their own land. You were out there in front on so many issues, including the Obama overreach on all forms of energy. Do the people of Oklahoma recall that as you throw your hat in the ring for the Senate seat?
Just last night I was in Oklahoma City at the Cowboy Hall of Fame at an event, and it was wonderful to hear back from Oklahomans. One, of the appreciation they had for President Trump's leadership, the courageous leadership, the leadership of taking on the regulatory infrastructure of Washington, D.C., not just in the EPA, but we did it across, as you know, the entire administration. So, yes, I think they see it, particularly right now, because, when I left the administration in 2018, we were energy independent, environmental outcomes had improved, and now, just a short time later, we're energy dependent and relied upon our foes to supply the needed energy for our citizens and our economy. I mean, we've gone backwards, and it's getting worse. And you know this, you know this very well. This isn't just an issue for America. This is an issue for the world. I mean, energy and currency are tools that are used as you know, in weapons and geopolitical politics. And what's happened, I've spent a great deal of time the last 3 or 4 years in areas of the world, Bulgaria, Sofia, Romania, and Bucharest, Czech Republic, and other places with respect to American energy exports. And I can tell you, just 3 or 4 years ago, after I left the administration, being in those places, they were thirsty and hungry for American energy because they did not want to be reliant upon Russia. And we couldn't get them into energy, Hugh. We could not.
I'm going to talk to your former cabinet colleague, Mike Pompeo, about that at the bottom of the hour. But I'm interested in a political thing about muscle memory. I went on a bike in Paris a couple of days ago, and no one forgets how to ride a bike. Do you remember how to campaign for office? You ran and won twice statewide in Oklahoma. You ran as a state senator in Oklahoma at least twice, I think. Do retail political skills come back to you after you've been away for 6 years?
Well, I pray so. I mean, I think Hugh, it's, look, I think the most important thing in running for office is being authentic, being authentically who you are. And I've always believed in this grand vision of this country, that we are different, that we are unique on the world stage. And the people of this country don't exist to serve the government exists to serve us. And candidly, when you look at Washington D.C. today, it's a place where things aren't, what they should be. The U.S. Senate and the constitutional framework, and you know this very well, was not intended just to be another body in the legislative, section of government. It was U.S. Senate was supposed to operate differently than the U.S. House. It was a place where adults and statesmen went to look at the long view of the republic, to not do what was most expedient or most populist, but to do what was right for the preservation of the republic long term, to make the tough decisions. And I was glad to be a part of President Trump's cabinet where we did exactly that. We made the tough decisions. We took on the infrastructure, the regulatory state. We achieved good outcomes, both for our citizens and the country, but also obviously in my case, the environmental outcomes as well. So it was a commitment of change. And being President Trump's point on some of those most transformative areas was something that I count a great privilege, and I think will resonate well, in this race. And, obviously I seek to offer that as I enter the race.
General Pruitt, hi, this is Ed Morrissey. Great to be speaking with you this morning. I got a chance over the years to get to know Senator James Inhofe just a little bit, right? One of the grand gentlemen of the Senate, somebody who's I believe is beloved by Oklahomans. You're going to have a difficult time filling his shoes, right? Or anybody's, not you, but anybody who comes in there is going to have a difficult time filling his shoes. What do you say to people that to sort of give you that sense of having the best opportunity for continuity and then growth, of course, from James Inhofe's legacy?
Well, two things. I mean, Senator Inhofe was so important and helpful to me in my confirmation process, along with others. And I appreciate I spent a lot of time with him during that process. And so it was something I had known him well before, but got to know him very, very well during that process. And I'm thankful for his leadership over the many decades he served. But I think also going forward, Ed, James Langford's a good friend. James is someone that we're like-minded, we're aligned. And I think in a state, when you have two that are in a body, you want to work together in a way that's cohesive and emphasize respective strengths. I mean, as Attorney General, as you indicated earlier, I think the judicial confirmation process, in some of the federalism issues between the U.S. government and the states in regulatory policy in all forms, is something that I will know very, very well because of my previous, service. And James Langford, has his strengths that complement those. And so, that's the way you work together in respect in states. And look, I think the U.S. Senate needs to be a place, where we go and tackle these tough issues and show the kind of courage, and conviction, but also civility. Those things all matter. And our enemies today, Ed, in my view, they look at us and they question whether we can govern ourselves anymore. And the degree of the manners of our politics right now are so divisive that they believe that we cannot, and they're taking the long view, and that's why you see the kind of aggression that you see in various places of the world. China being more aggressive, and obviously Russia presently, and they don't believe that we are able to lead and to be cohesive and to be about the American vision as we have in the past. That has to change.
Senator, I'm calling you Senator Pruitt already. General Pruitt, this is a sprint. I've got a friend in there with Alex Gray and other people are running, but you've got the advantage of name ID, and people know you in Oklahoma. They love you in Oklahoma. What is your website? What is your Twitter handle? Where do people find you to help you out?
Look, ScottForOklahoma.com is a place where people can go to join the movement. And when I say movement, there are two things that I think are most desperately needed. One is restoring America's presence on the stage with respect to what we're energy dependent today. We need to become energy independent again. But more than that, dominant. When I left the administration, and President Trump always talked about this, it's not just a matter of energy independence, it's energy dominance, because to the degree that America is producing the world's energy, environmental outcomes are better and the world is safer. So we've got to get back to that point. And then secondly, we've got to restore our ability, particularly in the U.S. Senate, to be a place where the tough decisions are made. We lead and we show the world that we can do it, and that liberty and freedom still is absolutely dominant in this country. We've got to get back to that place.
Scott for Oklahoma.
ScottForOklahoma.com.
We will be back and talk to you again when I'm back stateside. General Scott Pruitt, former Attorney General of Oklahoma, now candidate for Senate in Oklahoma, former administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. Scott for Oklahoma.com. If you want to push back, oh boy, you need to push back with Scott. Scott for Oklahoma.com. Good to talk to you, General. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be right back from Paris.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Job Creators Network.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Period, emotions, truth is timeless. And you guys also have eternal wisdom that we both know comes from the Word of God. And those 5-minute videos from PragerU were so impactful because they were so simple, straight to the point, and so full of facts that is the remedy for leftism, if you will. It's the remedy for being in your feelings. And so there was a couple of videos, but the 5-minute videos were just fantastic for me. They were easy, short, stuff that I could watch, and were just amazing.
Did somebody bring those to your attention, or you just discovered it on the internet?
No, just kind of discovered them on the internet.
That's fascinating. That's great.
Yeah.
Social media.
Yes.
Do you have? I often ask this of Prager Force members. Do you have a favorite video? And I don't. You may not, and I don't care what it is if you do. But I'm curious.
I do. It's the 5-minute video about the separation of church and state. I love that because he just goes into all the history of it, how there's not in the Constitution. I actually have a show, it's called Church and State, where my desire is to bring faith and politics together, kind of like Jack Hibbs or Rob McCoy. I want the church, I want people who have not been engaged in this kind of arena before to see that there's really no difference, that everything is sacred, kind of like the Jewish mind.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Fiance? No, I can't be your fiance.
You're gonna go. You're gonna be my fiance, and you're gonna be the most amazing, fascinating, most successful man ever. We're only gonna be there for a few hours, eat dinner, and I promise we'll have the best breakup of all time.
My baby, my princess. Oh, yeah.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Stressed? But now she's got this to deal with because that's the point. It's how cruel they are. That's how vicious and mean-spirited and cruel the Adam Kinzingers and the Liz Cheneys and the Bob Woodwards of the world are. They're a vicious, vicious bunch. Let me give you another example in reminding you of why you're on the right side during these extraordinary times. I don't know who Dana Gould is. Never heard of him. He's got a podcast of some kind, and he's a comic. But he sent out a tweet that went viral for all the wrong reasons. His tweet said, and I quote, "Thinking about Rush Limbaugh and how now that he's dead, you never, ever hear about him. No one mentions anything he did because what he did had no value. It contributed nothing worthwhile to the culture, nothing of lasting value. Again, with all due respect to Dana Gould, who I've never heard from, I'm not sure what you've contributed to society. I don't know how many millions and millions of dollars you've directed to charities and the philanthropic works that Limbaugh did during his too brief a time on this planet. But I'm going to go out on a limb and think that you don't even have a fingernail worth of merit in terms of contributions to society compared to the late Rush Limbaugh. But again, it's the cruelty, it's the viciousness of the left that matters. That's what stands out. They are a vicious, vicious bunch.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt from what we call aggrandizement number 2 in Paris with radio blogger Ed Morrissey standing by in Texas, joined by Tarzana Joe, the poet laureate of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Hugh. In honor of you and Dwayne's excellent vacation, the title of this week's poem is Fait Accompli. However, I will not be delivering it in a French accent.
Oh, too bad.
If you're driving toward a precipice or speeding toward a wall, you would try to slow your progress. You should try to break your fall. When you plant the seed selected in a field and nothing grows, it should lead you to consider, guess I shouldn't have planted those. When your house is on the market, but no one will pay the price, fixing broken windows and a paint job might be nice. His fastball and his slider may have made you a believer, but the score is 10-0, so you call for a reliever. I give you these examples not to be obtuse or arty, but to comprehend the thinking of the Democratic Party. For they're speeding toward disaster if you listen to the news, but there's been no fine adjustment to their policies or views. Taxing you and spending hasn't really worked before. If they get elected, they just promise to do more. Higher oil prices are a platform for inflation, show shutting down the pipelines is their gift to our great nation. Not the slightest waver in their platforms been detected. How could they be running and appear so unaffected? Now, I'm certain all elections are legit and on the level, but they're running like a party with a contract with the devil. That's fait accompli by Tarzana Joe.
I do not know. You did not say if you are driving towards a precipice or headed towards a wall. Why did you not give us a French accent? Ed, don't you think a French accent would work better with that?
I think a French accent works great with any sort of poetry whatsoever, Hugh.
Ever. Baudelaire, Joe.
Sacre bleu.
TarzanaJoe.com. Let's make sure the Parisians go to TarzanaJoe.com for that poet. Au revoir, or whatever that. What did you call it again?
Fait accompli.
Okay, I thought maybe it was aggrandizement. Isn't that what we call the districts around here? The aggrandizement 1 through 4?
Arrondissement.
Oh, Jesuit education coming through there a little bit for all your poetry needs. And by the way, do you compose poems in French, Joe?
I have actually. I have a client who makes an annual trip to France with a group, and I make some really bad rhymes in French. Yes.
Petite rhymes?
Un petit peu.
Oh, you're actually.
Waffethin.
TarzanaJoe at Reagan.com for all your poetry needs. Rates are reasonable. If you want to hear fait accompli, go to TarzanaJoe.com. Do you post the audio of that, Joe, by the way?
No, I'd be interested to do that if you would select. Can I
You could just steal our stuff. I think that I got a request this week from the Washington Post if I would read my columns. I said, why not? I thought maybe Joe would do it. But you have to do it in a French accent, Joe.
Hello.
Hello. TarzanaJoe at Reagan.com. Thank you, Joe. The International Alliance of Christians and Jews is in their last day of raising money with Salem. Great sponsor of this show, and thousands of people have stepped up to fly relief to Ukraine from Israel, from David Ben Gurion Airport. And the supplies go in, and then they load up Jews of Ukraine who want to make Aliyah on the planes and bring them back. And that costs money. and you're raising it with me. 800-980-2070. 800-980-2070. Operators are there right now. 800-980-2070. $10 to $1,000. The news of the massacre in Mariupol this morning. 9,000 bodies. It's so stunning and disgusting. I'll talk to Secretary Pompeo after the break about what can be done about this. But go to HughHewitt.com. The banner is there at the top. And please make your donation. Yael Eckstein is there. Here's what she has to say about this.
The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is on the ground in Ukraine right now responding to this devastating crisis. The fellowship has been working here on the ground in Ukraine with our trusted partners for over 30 years. The distribution centers and volunteers are standing by. We need your help now.
Thank you so much for all you do. Let me also remind all you business owners out there, Stamps.com, Stamps.com, Stamps.com. Why do I tell you about it? Because inflation is eating away at your bottom line every single day. You can't afford to have that happen to you day in and day out. You need the discounts that only Stamps.com give you at the United States Postal Service and at UPS. Significant cost-saving, bottom line, helping discounts at Stamps.com. Use my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, 4-week trial, no commitments, no long-term contracts, free postage as a gift to you for trying it out, free scale. But you got to go to Stamps.com and use the code Hugh if you're going to do that. Stay tuned. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo coming up next on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
If I were to pick the most consequential conservative of the modern era, it would be Roger Ailes.
So is he the pit bull of American politics?
When Roger Ailes is on your team, you win.
Go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
These are clowns who are desperate to prop Joe Biden up. And every last one of the rhinos who did it, the never-Trumpers and the Jen Rubins of the world, they're just flailing, pitiful people who bet on the wrong horse. They're on the wrong side of history, and they are certainly wrong for trying to elevate this guy beyond what he is, which is a blundering, doddering, incompetent old man who should not be in the Oval Office. And that's what we're up against right now. We have a chance to fix these things, and it starts on November the 8th. Beware of rhinos who are propping up either Democrats or fellow rhinos.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
When you look at what SpaceX has done with their reusable rockets, we are seeing science fiction of the 1950s coming to life. Rockets land as they always were meant to do.
It's really trying to land on a postage stamp.
Elon Musk is a visionary, someone who comes along perhaps once a century. It's one thing to run a company that's worth $1 billion. Elon Musk has 4.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Days of the week, he drank beer. In high school, a United States Senator wasting everybody's time. Think what the Washington Post would be saying if somebody said to Ketanji Brown Jackson, how many days a week did you drink beer in high school, huh? Did you smoke pot in high school? What days of the week? It makes your blood boil. But they're clowns. These aren't serious people. Cory Booker is a joke. He's a joke. These Democrats who grandstand and who pretend to be moral arbiters are fools.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
It has to be accompanied by zinc hydroxychloroquine. Why didn't they rapidly have clinical trials on that? Would therapeutics be better than vaccinations? Atlas said we need accountability on the people in pharma who didn't show fully the data. We don't have the full set of data from the CDC on complications from the vaccines. Why not? We've had hundreds of millions of doses of these vaccines administered. We don't have a full set of data on the complications yet. Why? What kind of scientific process is that?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on Wilkow.
And here's my serious question. You could ask this perhaps of friends, family members, or coworkers. If you're against this bill, that's why you're so obsessed with explaining sexual orientation, sex, and transgenderism to a 5-year-old.
Keep up with what's trending. Watch Wilkow at 5 p.m. Eastern on Salem News Channel.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, live from Paris. Radio blogger is with me, Dwayne, and in Texas, Ed Morrissey is standing by should we crash and burn. I'm joined by former Secretary of State, former head of the CIA, former member of the House of Representatives, now the president of CavPac.com, Secretary Mike Pompeo. Mr. Pompeo, welcome back. Good to talk to you, Mr. Secretary.
Hugh, it's great to be with you this morning. Hope you're having a great time in France.
We've actually had a gorgeous week. I know when you're the Secretary of State, you really don't get to enjoy the cities you visit, do you?
No, not much. It's mostly work, but it's always great to be there representing America wherever you're traveling.
Well, I want to get to the Russia war in a second, but first, I saw yesterday, even in my remove in Paris, that you have endorsed David McCormick, probably in a decisive move in the Pennsylvania Senate race. And David's been on the show a lot. I stay neutral in these. Why did Mike Pompeo say we're going in with David McCormick?
In every race I've supported someone out of CavPac, Hugh, it's been because I thought they'd be the best leader for America. In this case, I'm confident that's Dave. He'll be great for the people of Pennsylvania, too. He's really battle-tested. He's been through so much, right? I knew him almost 40 years ago when we were cadets at West Point. He was a year behind me. So I've known him a long time. I know his color. I know his character. I know the nature of who he is. I know how hard he'll work and what a leader he'll become. Those are the reasons I want to get out there and help Dave. I think he'll be great for the people of Pennsylvania, and I know that he'll serve America in a way that will make every one of us proud.
That makes a lot of. I did not know you were close to each other at West Point. That tells me a lot. I thought you were a tank guy, weren't you, Mr. Secretary? And he's an airborne, so I didn't know that the.
I was a tank guy. He was an 82nd Airborne guy, but we needed them, and they really needed us.
Okay, let me go to the very darkest story. 9,000 bodies, mass grave outside of Mariupol. What is your advice to the Biden administration about what to do about this other than confirm it and tell us about it?
Well, those are both very important. It is horrific to see what's taking place in places like Bucha and Mariupol and all across Ukraine. The horrific pictures that we know to be true are so deeply disturbing. It's why deterrence matters. It's why you needed to stop this thing before it ever took place. Today the mission set is to continue to do everything you can to highlight these atrocities so the world can see what's really taking place, so disinformation doesn't flood the space from the Russians. Second, provide the tools that the Ukrainians ask for. This is something we talked about a couple of weeks back. We've been slow and late and small in delivery of those weapon systems, and importantly, the intelligence support that they need to actually be in the right place at the right time with the right weapon system. We could do it. We have the capability to do it, and it is not only a moral imperative, but as I think we can all see now, it really matters to the United States. What happens in Kyiv doesn't stay there. It comes to our shores. Our food, lots of things are going to be more expensive, more difficult to come by as a result of the instability now, not only in Ukraine, but throughout Europe.
Mr. Secretary, I want to ask you about the lesson that we are getting now about the United Nations and multilateral organizations, including NATO, right? Because I think NATO has been actually performing pretty well in this crisis, but the United Nations is standing by while a genocide is taking place. They're standing by with the genocide in China as well. Whereas NATO, which is a little bit more aligned to a specific vision and a specific type of governance, seems to be more focused, more ascendant, and more responsive to these atrocities. Is this really the end of the United Nations as any sort of moral force? And frankly, has it ever really served in that capacity?
This is a really important conversation. The Trump administration was accused of not liking these multilateral organizations. The truth is, it wasn't about liking them or not liking them. It was about, are they fit for purpose? Do they serve the intended mission statement for which they were brought together? Are we just wasting our energy, time, and money and frankly fooling ourselves and people all across the world? I think the UN for a long time has been an organization incapable of actually dealing with the things it's been tasked to deal with. I saw it on the China issue, right? When you can't call out the Chinese Communist Party for what's taking place there, or when the Wuhan virus is unleashed from the world from that place, and the Secretary General of the UN says, I'm not going to get involved in this. I think it's just fundamentally broken, and we've seen that here too. We've seen dozens of nations abstain from deciding which side of this fight to be on at the UN, and then even the UN Security Council itself, right? Russia a member, China a member. Even the Security Council itself has demonstrated its inability to deal with what is fundamentally a problem that looks and feels a lot like the very reason it was created, right? It followed from World War II. We now have the Russia attacking a European nation. It is broken, and I think our continued involvement there ought to be reconsidered in a very, very serious way. We got out of the UN Human Rights Council. I think now our money going there is really questionable. And
Secretary Pompeo, you have the advantage of everyone else talking about the war, of having actually dealt with Putin, dealt a lot with Lavrov, their foreign minister. You've dealt with Macron. You've dealt, I think, with the German foreign minister, who I think was the foreign minister under Angela Merkel. As you assess everybody doing what they're doing, who has surprised you? Who has disappointed you? And what changes have you seen in the 2 years since you left Foggy Bottom, less than 2 years, in the various actors on the world stage with whom you were in daily contact?
I highlight too, Hugh. I think we got to give President Zelensky an enormous amount of credit. Right, we had President Ghani faced with a similar situation, cut and ran, and the political apparatus and the military fell. Zelensky said, "Nope, don't give me weapons, or don't give me a ride out of the country. Give me weapons," and he has held that team together in a way that I think many would not have predicted. Second, I'd want to talk about Chancellor Scholz. He was, in fact, the Treasury Minister, the Finance Minister, when I was a Secretary of State. I dealt with him a fair amount on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline issue. Trying to convince them that this day would come, that the Russians would use energy against the Ukrainians, against the Germans in a way that would harm the people of Germany. Pushed and shoved, he's now gotten to a better place. I hope that when this crisis passes, when the peak of this moment passes, that Chancellor Scholz will come to understand that windmills and sunshine are fun and interesting, but they're not going to do the things we need to do to keep our people safe. They need to get an energy policy that makes sense, and it needs to be supported by an American energy policy that helps them get to the right place. We can deliver them the natural gas and fuel that they need. I hope that the Greens and Scholz inside of Germany will come to see that and build on it in the years ahead.
Secretary Pompeo, Vladimir Putin has been hinting at the use of nuclear weapons. He's been rattling that cage now for several weeks based on the fact that It looks like he's facing humiliation in a large part of Ukraine. There's a lot of warnings about that. President Trump's national security advisor, Robert O'Brien, wrote a really interesting piece in the Wall Street Journal about what the American response should be in this case, preemptively as well as potentially post-use. What is your perspective on how best to deter Vladimir Putin from unleashing tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine?
The most important thing we can do is, and one of the things that Ambassador O'Brien highlighted, was that we have to be very clear about the things that we will do, and we need to make damn sure that we are actually prepared to do the things we tell Vladimir Putin that we're going to do. So that clarity, that transparency, that communication is absolutely central, so that Vladimir Putin can put that into his thought process and his cost-benefit analysis when he's considering whether that's something he actually wants to do, if it's in his best interest. This is the cold-hearted, thuggish Vladimir Putin that will do simple math to decide what makes sense for him. And so Ambassador O'Brien proposed a number of things, not all of which were in Europe, right? He talked about things we could do to the Russians where we're side by side with them in the Middle East and Syria. There are many tools that are at our disposal. The Biden administration should work, develop a plan, a strategy, and then we should clearly communicate that to Vladimir Putin directly so that he knows what the American response will be. And if he should make such a mistake, if he should do something so dangerous, so abhorrent as to use a tactical nuclear weapon against civilian populations or against the military in Ukraine, we should execute the plan that we told him we were going to execute, jot and tittle, and immediately. No discussion, no meetings of the National Security Council. Decision made, execution mode.
Boy, I hope Tony Blinken hears that, Mr. Secretary. Let me move to another part of the world. In Shanghai, 25 million people are starving. And if anyone doubted, and you never did, the ruthlessness of President Xi and his colleagues in the CCP, it's on full display now. Do you think they may be facing the condition? I'm in France, where a lack of food led to the 1789 revolution. We saw lack of food in Russia in 1918 lead to revolution. Do you think China is dancing on the edge of a cliff here with what they're doing in Shanghai?
Well, Xi bragged about his COVID policy after having unleashed the virus on millions of people from the Wuhan lab all across the world. And now he's got a real political problem and a food problem inside of his own country because of what is a crazy zero COVID objective. It's different than France. There's a lot more political control. The surveillance state is more powerful. They're willing to use force, significant force against their own people. I suppose there could be protests, but my guess is that Xi is prepared to unleash the power of the domestic surveillance services against anyone who steps out of line. And it could look something more like what we saw in Tiananmen Square than something like you saw in Paris, France. The power of the state there is enormous, and I know that Xi will make sure that he doesn't have that bad day that you're talking about.
With that in mind, Secretary Pompeo, there's a report out this morning that Republicans are looking to dial back some of the tariffs on China. One of the hallmarks of the Trump administration was its get tough policy with China. Is it presumably I would suppose that they're trying to do this as a way to ease inflation, but is this really the time to take the pressure off of China?
This is most certainly not the time. I've seen that reporting too. Look, it could be that there's a tariff or two that's in the wrong place at the wrong spot. I suppose that's possible. I don't know exactly what they're thinking about. But if the idea is to either reduce inflation at home, that's silly. It won't accomplish the mission set. There's no way that what they're contemplating can solve the problems that have been created by the Fed and now by terrible policies here domestically by the Biden administration. They're not going to solve the inflation problem with this. And second, the timing is really terrible. To send a message to Xi Jinping, who has clearly sided with Vladimir Putin, and to create more wealth for Xi Jinping that he can ultimately provide support and underwrite Vladimir Putin in this war. The timing would be terrible. The messaging would be terrible. And what Xi Jinping would come to understand about American leadership would put Taiwan and the rest of the Southeast Asian region at real risk as well, Ed.
Last question, Mr. Secretary. The Republican National Committee, led by Ron McDaniel, said we're not doing the Commission on Presidential Debates. That might have real-world implications for you within the year if you decide to seek the presidency. What did you make of the RNC's decision? I think the Commission on Presidential Debates probably will try and put it on CNN+. But what does Mike Pompeo think about?
Yes, exactly. Or maybe on Disney. Look. I think in the end, Hugh, this was the right decision. The commission had lost its way. I've seen the debates these last 2 or 3 cycles. Save for Hugh Hewitt getting candidates on stage, I haven't seen a good moderator that was straight up asking serious questions. These are important times, serious times, Hugh. We ought to hold debates that are serious and thoughtful. Give the candidates a chance to say the things that they intend to do so that we can hold them accountable when the time comes. The Commission on Presidential Debates had not been able to deliver that, and I think it'll be great to find campaigns and candidates that can now make good decisions about how to present the issues to the American people in a way that will actually reflect well on our country and have a really good competitive campaign as well.
Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, thanks for joining Ed Morrissey and me this morning. I appreciate it greatly. Hang in there. Keep going with CavPac.com. If you want to support great candidates, go to CavPac.com and support Mike Pompeo. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you. Well, let me remind everyone, ReliefFactor.com keeps us on the air. ReliefFactor.com keeps me going through the streets and the highways and byways of the Latin Quarter, on the boat, going around on bicycle, whatever I'm doing. ReliefFactor.com lets me do it at 66 as well as I did at 56 and 46. If you're aging or you're exercising and you're definitely doing the former and you should be doing the latter, go get your ReliefFactor.com. $19.95 is a 3-week starter pack. Great sponsor of this show. I tell you about it 3 times a day. Normally I take it, but I forgot it. ReliefFactor.com.
Trending.
We have clinical trials on that. Would therapeutics be better than vaccinations? Atlas said we need accountability on the people in pharma who didn't show fully the data. We don't have the full set of data from the CDC on complications from the vaccines. Why not? We've had hundreds of millions of doses of these vaccines administered. We don't have a full set of data on the complications yet.
Humble.com.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt from Paris, France with Generalissimo. Ed Morrissey is in Texas standing by as we head into hour number 3 of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Deborah Flora joins us. She is one of the producers of the new SalemNow.com movie, Whose Children Are They? Deborah, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great, Hugh. Thank you so much for having us on the show. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Obviously, Whose Children Are They is very relevant given the debate in Florida. Tell us what Whose Children Are They is about and where people can see it, how long it is, and what the message is.
You got it. Absolutely. Well, we made Whose Children Are They because we needed to put together a comprehensive expose of what is going on in schools, because parents will hear something, maybe a story in one area about CRT or another story about gender fluidity in kindergarten, or maybe, exploitative sex education in another area. But we wanted to put together a comprehensive expose so they can see it all together, realize it's connected, and what they can do about it. So we spent 2 years, over 120 hours of footage, over 80 interviews, parents, teachers, frontline experts, and students speaking up. And most of all, it's what they can do about it. And they can go to whosechildrenarethey.com to learn more. It is showing now on Salem Now, and our hope is that everyone sees it and this really galvanizes people to make a change.
Deborah, this is Ed Morrissey, and I think that this is coming at just the right time. I think parents have been asleep maybe for a couple of decades on how curriculum has shifted in schools from out of their control and into the control of elites that don't have their children's best interests in mind, or at least as viewed by their parents. The last 2 years, though, of having closed schools and then remote learning have given parents, I think, a really unique window into what's actually been happening in schools. Do you sense that as well? Is that what you sense is partly behind this, is the fact that parents have kind of woken up as a result of being able to look into the classroom where they weren't able to do that before?
Oh, absolutely, Ed. Yeah, the silver lining of COVID, if there is one, is that parents got to see. I mean, most parents are very busy, sometimes working 2 jobs. They're, running around. They just didn't have a chance. And most people presumed that the education was the kind of education they grew up with. I started seeing this when I started Parents United America about 3 years ago with the sex ed that was not age appropriate and very explicit. In fact, by the way, part of our movie, if it was rated, it would be rated R, and it's simply what they're showing kids. But what happened during COVID is parents got a front row seat when their kids were learning at home. And when you have a school district in Tennessee that wants parents to sign a waiver so they don't see what their kids are learning, something's up. Parents did end up seeing the CRT, the extreme social agenda, and it's happening exactly when academics are plummeting and indoctrination is skyrocketing. So there is an awakening, and the goal with the movie is to make sure that this movement doesn't dissipate, that it reaches that critical mass and tipping point where real change occurs.
Deborah, Flora, Hugh Hewitt again. Whose Children Are They are available over at SalemNow.com. I anticipate the left will say, because I hear it all the time, CRT is not taught in the schools. It's an academic theory taught in graduate school. To which, what does Deborah, Flora, and the producers of Whose Children Are They respond?
Oh, without a doubt it's being taught, whether it's called educational equity or whatever they want to call it. I experienced it firsthand in our school district where they call it educational equity. We found a leaked training that was nothing but CRT. And by the way, in that training, they called parents dissenters and taught how to get around us so we don't know what's happening. When in that area of CRT, we interviewed a lot of parents right in Minnesota near Ground Zero where George Floyd incident happened. And these were Black parents who know it's being taught in their school and are fed up because they do not want their children taught they are victims and oppressed just because they have more melanin in their skin. So it's happening. Parents need to be aware. And it doesn't matter what they call it. It's not a separate course, but it's a filter through which they teach so much in their kids' education.
Ed, go ahead.
Minnesota's a great place to do this. I wrote about this 13 years ago. The University of Minnesota's education department required their students to declare their their privilege. They had to basically sign that they were privileged and that they had to demonstrate that through their coursework and through their later profession work. So this is not something that's new. This is something that's been really embedded into education programs for probably a couple of decades at least, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's been coming for quite a while, and we did film all over America, but we wanted to film that portion right there in Minnesota. And parents were talking about how there is this move to eliminate honors classes and AP classes because of racial profiling, saying, oh, there weren't enough of this race in this class, so we're going to eliminate it entirely. What it's really saying is, oh, if you have more melanin in your skin, you're unable to achieve, which is by definition racist. It's been going on for quite a long time, and that's what we set up in the movie all the way back to John Dewey, the father of modern education, who really actually was a communist and like the Soviet style of school. That infiltrated very early on, and it's culminating in, Marx's critical theory, which is critical race theory, just with a different wrapper put on it.
Deborah, Flora, thank you so much for joining us. Whose Children Are They? Available at salemnow.com. Ed Morrissey, thank you. I'm going to go talk with Larry Arnn from Hillsdale College next. I want to remind everyone out there, Job Creators Network is a great sponsor of this show. They have a great new website up right now. You go over to Job Creators Network to find it, but you've got to go and be involved in stopping this tax bill before it gets going. The tax bill is a nightmare. Job Creators Network is out there trying to stop it very, very, very quickly, and it's got to be soon. So head over to the website at thegreatopportunityproject.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
It has to be accompanied by zinc hydroxychloroquine. Why didn't they rapidly have clinical trials on that? Would therapeutics be better than vaccinations? Atlas said we need accountability on the people in pharma who didn't show fully the data. We don't have the full set of data from the CDC on complications from the vaccines. Why not? We've had hundreds of millions of doses of these vaccines administered. We don't have a full set of data on the complications yet. Why? What kind of scientific process is that?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on Wilkow.
And here's my serious question. You could ask this perhaps of friends, family members, or coworkers. If you're against this bill that simply sets age appropriateness between kindergarten and third grade, all of these people in Hollywood are for abortion. How would you explain an abortion to a 5-year-old? Would you show them medically accurate images? Would you show them a video? Would you explain in perfect medical, scientific only, clinical language what an abortion is? No, you wouldn't. Well, why not? You certainly could to a 17, 18-year-old, a senior in high school who's graduating. Why wouldn't you explain it the exact same way to a 5-year-old? I can't hear you. Because that's not, say it with me, age appropriate. So that means that when we're talking about war or violence, death and destruction, medical issues, sexual orientation and transgender issues, there are some things that we don't need to explicitly explain to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or even a 7-year-old. You get them in 4th grade. Is that not good enough? And the other side of this is, why don't you just tell us why you're so obsessed with explaining sexual orientation, sex, and transgenderism to a 5-year-old.
Keep up with what's trending. Watch Will Cow at 5 p.m. Eastern on Salem News Channel. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
These are clowns who are desperate to prop Joe Biden up. And every last one of the rhinos who did it, the never-Trumpers and the Jen Rubins of the world, they're just flailing, pitiful people who bet on the wrong horse. They're on the wrong side of history, and they are certainly wrong for trying to elevate this guy beyond what he is, which is a blundering, doddering, incompetent old man who should not be in the Oval Office. And that's what we're up against right now. We have a chance to fix these things, and it starts on November the 8th. Beware of rhinos who are propping up either Democrats or fellow rhinos.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
As Galileans, we witnessed his first miracle. He warned us that a time of great deception would come. But we must hold on to our faith. That one day he would return to save us from the end of the world.
What if there was evidence that proves that this is all real? Because there were so many people bringing up little bits and pieces of this. I'm thinking, there's got to be a pattern here. This discovery proves that he is coming back. This is the most profound discovery in human history.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
He takes money that the U.S. gives, and when he doesn't split it with the Bidens, he puts it in his own bank account. So, yeah, I feel bad for the Ukrainian people, but no. I mean, what are we going to do? Just go to the Federal Reserve and fire up the old money machine printer?
You know, I tend to agree with him. On the other hand, it's hard not to see the utter devastation, humanity, and the strength, the bravery of these Ukrainian people who are standing up to Russia's atrocities. I told you this a couple weeks ago. A Ukrainian that I met in Florida. Guy told me, he said, listen, Americans don't really quite fully get Zelensky. Zelensky is not exactly Mother Teresa. That came from a Ukrainian.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
You called your son, and you personally promised him you would be here.
Prayer is a powerful thing, Ethan. It really does work, if you believe.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Stressed? But now she's got this to deal with because that's the point. It's how cruel they are. That's how vicious and mean-spirited and cruel the Adam Kinzingers and the Liz Cheneys and the Bob Woodwards of the world are. They're a vicious, vicious bunch. Let me give you another example in reminding you of why you're on the right side during these extraordinary times. I don't know who Dana Gould is. Never heard of him. He's got a podcast of some kind, and he's a comic. but he sent out a tweet that went viral for all the wrong reasons. His tweet said, and I quote, "Thinking about Rush Limbaugh and how..."
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. The following program is pre-recorded.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. That music means the Hillsdale Dialogue is underway. Now, I'm in France. I recorded this with Dr. Arnn before I left as part of a series on Aristotle, the ethics, his consideration of friendship. This is the third of 3 parts on it. The first 2 parts are over at iTunes under Hillsdale Dialogue. They're collected at Hugh for Hillsdale. Everything that we talk about is available at hillsdale.edu. And if you are like me, you've forgotten a lot of what we've talked about. So luckily, I am like Aristotle. I go back and remind you about what we've talked about, but I have Dr. Arnn to actually do it well. And so the full discussion of the ethics is available in one of the fine Hillsdale video courses at hillsdale.edu. Hillsdale's ethics course, led by Dr. Arnn and a dozen guinea pigs who wandered into that room looking nice and came out 4 months later exhausted, tired, and broken, but smarter for it. And at the end, they talk about friendship. We're just going to go right to the end. By the way, do any of those kids still talk to you after that thing?
They're my buds, yeah.
I told people they should watch that class just to learn what teaching looks like. So many people don't know what teaching looks like, and that's teaching.
Well, it's, that's right. It's a class is a joint effort. You have to get that through your noggin. And, there are some professors here who they're just wonderful lecturers. And they stand up in front of the class and they start talking, and they talk for 50 minutes. And they may have some interruptions. There's usually time for discussion later. But everybody just sits and it's like watching a movie. And that's a very good way to do it, right? But I don't do it that way. I can't. I don't like it. And so first of all, if they yawn, that's a terrible thing, right?
Yes, it is.
If they yawn, you ask them a question. And some days everybody's tired, and you say, "Are we ready to do this today?" And then everybody sits up straight, because we got to do it. But they, the best kind of question is, what does that mean, right? We're going to read, we're going to talk about friendship today, so we're going to read books 8 and 9 of the Ethics, which are the 2 books devoted to friendship. There's one book devoted to justice, the only book, the first virtue that gets a whole book to itself. But then friendship comes along and gets 2. And the implication made explicit is friendship is better than justice. And that's a very important teaching in Aristotle. But you start with, Book 8, Chapter 1. I'm going to go to it.
While you do that, I'm going to remind my producers to come back with Love is Stronger Than Justice, because that is the Sting song that fits perfectly. Go ahead. Have you found it?
Yeah, here it is.
All
right. It would follow after these things to go through what concerns friendship, since it is a certain kind of virtue, or goes with virtue, and it is also most necessary for life. So that's a big statement, right? And it means, what do you need to know to understand the statement? Certain kind of virtue. What's a virtue? In what way is it not the typical kind? In what way does it go along with virtue? There's 100 questions in there, right? And so a great way to ask those questions is somebody read sentence 1 and tell us what it means.
Yep.
And then that may be the only question you ask in the entire class.
And it happened that way. You captured that on the video. It's edited, obviously. Was it a 2-hour sit-down every week or 3 that you got down to 25 minutes to 35 minutes?
Yeah, it was a couple, I think, yeah. And it was, we just, you talk. I mean, the way I teach, I have a weird life, and so I teach a whole week in one sitting, either Monday afternoon or Friday afternoon. I start not earlier than 3 p.m. because classes don't go past 3 p.m. here, typically, because there's extracurricular. There's debate and chess and football, yeah, all that. That's, so in other words, the kids, they get time to do other stuff. But I teach only after 3. In other words, I cut into the extra curriculum. And that means, really, we can go as long as we want. And we sometimes, it's supposed to end at, what is it? If you start at 3, it's supposed to end at 6, 5:30, I think. I can never remember. And because there's like an hour-long class is really 50 minutes, I think. So, and it will usually end by the time, but, a third of the time, it just keeps going. I can remember some of the best classes I've ever taught, and it got to be 6:45, and I said, should we order pizza? And first of all, that's good for its own sake, right? That's
that's a good for its own sake, yes.
Yeah, it's final end to students. Yeah, let's get the pizza, right? And then we'll go till 9 o'clock. And nobody minds that. That's
what you go to college for. I've bedeviled your show pony, Kyle. I talked to him this week. I said, Kyle, this is so good, and we can show it, but I got to edit it a little bit. So some of them are perfectly timed for the Hillsdale Dialogue on the radio with the Salem News Channel, and others of them will require 3 or 4 minutes to cut. And I said, but I can't cut those 3 or 4. It's like I'm not a surgeon. I don't know how to do this. You've already reduced 3 hours to 30 minutes. And if I take another blade to it, I'll dash the operation. So he's undertaking that. You have some smart people around you, but he's rightly proud of that course. And I send everyone to hillsdale.edu. You can listen to it as I did, or you can watch it as many people want to. It's a dialogue. It can be listened to. And you begin to identify, by the way, the students by their voice, which is easy for me. That's what I do. But the average listener will be able to do that. And they have very strong personalities that come through.
Yeah, that class is not an actual class that I taught. It's a sort of a all-stars class.
Yes.
That all but a couple of them had taken the class. And the couple who hadn't, and I didn't even know, I didn't pick them. They asked students who'd taken the class who's smartest. And so they got a bunch of them, and then others pled their way in. But they were warned, you're going to have to know this book. How are you going to do that? And they did.
There were ringers. There were ringers. And I have never seen that many collared shirts in a college class or a law school class in a decade. So
Yeah.
they're all dressing up for Mrs. Arnn, I think. She must be around lurking somewhere.
Our kids dress pretty well. And we don't really have rules about that unless they're real slobs, and I just say straighten up, or somebody does. But the only annoyance, I don't let them wear baseball caps in class. And I'm trying to stop them from wearing them in the dining hall. And if I go around and tell them, and I do sometimes walk around and tell them to take their cap off, they do. It's always boys. Girls don't have to do it, see, according to the rules of etiquette. And then if you suspect that they're worried about their hair, that's a tremendous opportunity.
It's an advantage. It's the high ground, and you're on defense. Let me quickly bring back people to Aristotle. We're going to come back to the 3 kinds of friendship right after the break, and we'll review the first 2 in the section 2 and 3. 3 and 4 we'll do the highest kind. But I noted at the end of Cicero, which I've been preparing for next week already, virtue is the best thing, Laelius says at the end, but next to it is friendship. So virtue is everything, but is Cicero completely derivative of Aristotle?
Well, no, but significantly. I mean, if you imagine Cicero alive, he would speak only in reverence of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle.
Yes.
And he's different from them, remember, because there's something about him that's a parallel to Winston Churchill. He was a statesman.
He's a statesman. And he speaks like a statesman, and he writes like a statesman. It's an amazing guy, but Aristotle was no stranger to politics either. When we come back, we will pick up the two kinds of friendship that precede the best kind, remind you of that, and then move on to the final book of Aristotle's Ethics on Friendship. Not the final book of the Ethics, but the final book of the Ethics on Friendship. Don't go anywhere, America, except to hillsdale.edu, and you can find there the course that I'm talking about. You can download it. You can watch it. If you're a high school teacher, you can use 8 classes of it in a row, and you have the best course you've done on philosophy, government, and on teaching, and your kids will be enraptured by it. Hillsdale.edu, free for all comers. All you have to do is give me your email, and they don't abuse it. Hillsdale.edu. Look for the Aristotle course led by Dr. Arnn with his students. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere on Hugh Hewitt. It's the Hillsdale Dialogue.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
It has to be accompanied by zinc hydroxychloroquine. Why didn't they rapidly have clinical trials on that? Would therapeutics be better than vaccinations? Atlas said we need accountability on the people in pharma who didn't show fully the data. We don't have the full set of data from the CDC on complications from the vaccines. Why not? We've had hundreds of millions of doses of these vaccines administered. We don't have a full set of data on the complications yet. Why? What kind of scientific process is that?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on Wilkow.
And here's my serious question. You could ask this perhaps of friends, family members, or coworkers. If you're against this bill that simply sets age appropriateness between kindergarten and 3rd grade, all of these people in Hollywood are for abortion. How would you explain an abortion to a 5-year-old? Would you show them medically accurate images? Would you show them a video? Would you explain in perfect medical, scientific only, clinical language what an abortion is? No, you wouldn't. Well, why not? You certainly could to a 17, 18-year-old, a senior in high school who's graduating. Why wouldn't you explain the exact same way to a 5-year-old? I can't hear you. Because that's not, say it with me, age appropriate. So that means that when we're talking about war or violence, death and destruction, medical issues, sexual orientation and transgender issues, there are some things that we don't need to explicitly explain to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or even a 7-year-old. You get them in 4th grade. Is that not good enough? And the other side of this is, why don't you just tell us why you're so obsessed with explaining sexual orientation, sex, and transgenderism to a 5-year-old.
Keep up with what's trending. Watch Will Cow at 5 p.m. Eastern on Salem News Channel.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
As Galileans, we witnessed his
back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Normally, that's not Hillsdale Dialogue music, but since we're talking about love and friendship being greater than justice, it was appropriate to the time. Dr. Larry Arnn is my guest. We're talking about Aristotle's Ethics, Part 3 in our 3-part series. In the previous week, we covered the first kind of friendship, of utility, and the second kind of friendship, of pleasure. And before we go on to the third kind, the highest kind, Dr. Arnn, just to remind people, it's not bad to have friendships of utility. They just vanish. And friendships of pleasure may have a timeline and a purpose as well, but they're not bad things. They're good things.
Yeah, and, he says Aristotle is seductive when he talks about friendships of pleasure, because he mentions young people and what they like. and that's a good model, right? So why are girls and boys interested in each other? Well, there's a pleasure that they're interested in, but that's not the end of it, and it can't be. If it's the end of it, it's insufficient, right? So he later says that in a good marriage, they become friends of the highest kind, and of course, it's a fact. Somebody commented on this to me. I've always been struck by the fact that human beings are the only animals, or primates at least, that make love face-to-face. And, we're made to look at each other and talk to each other. And so that, too, points beyond itself, and that's one reason why friendships of pleasure have a higher standing and a greater durability than friendships of utility.
I am curious about the young people that you mentor at Hillsdale, whether or not they remain lifelong friends, and if the people in that class that we were talking about, if you expect them to still be talking to each other as long as they live.
The particular ones, it's hard to say, but one of my favorite things is the opening of college. It's like coming to Disneyland, except it's happier. And we get to threaten them and scare the freshmen, and they have an honor code talk, and I give it to them. They all get in the auditorium and talk to them about the honor code, and then it's very serious, and then they leave and sign it, or else they go home. One of my favorite things to say in there is, look around you. You probably are looking at your best friend for the rest of your life. And you are to treat everyone as if they are potentially that. And that's what we want. See, they all want that. It's complicated leaving college until you get a job. There's a million things you got to think about. But very often, groups of them are trying to get jobs in the same area so they can keep living together.
That's amazing. Dr. Arnn, when I was in law school, and I know law school better than college, your first friendships are friendships of utility. You form a study group. Otherwise, you'll be overwhelmed by the material in the first year. After you get through your friendship of utility, where you teach each other contracts and crimes, you move to friendships of pleasure, meaning what do we do to have any fun in law schools? Because it's absolutely soul-destroying monotony for years 2 and 3. And then you get to the real thing where 30 years later, I'm still hanging out with Tim and John and other friends of mine because that's what happens.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, if you, because see, when you do valuable things with people, it costs. You know, that's why war friendships abide, right? You know, you suffer and you risk, and if you live, you overcome. Well, you just don't forget that because it's formative, and the people you do that with, they're part of you now. Well, the highest kind of friendship involves seeing things, learning things, and seeing things that are good and beautiful for their own sake, and things that you will never forget. And a friend can help you see them better, just like they can help you study in law school in the early stages better. And so now you are part of that person and inseparable from that person.
And iron will sharpen iron for as long as it is iron. Stay tuned. I'll be right back. Dr. Arnn and I now talk about friendships of virtue. Don't go anywhere. Part 3 of the Aristotle Dialogue continues on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews.
Streaming on Salem Now.
This is a story of how 1 million children were placed with local foster families through an unlikely alliance between the Chinese government and a British footballer. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans. With unprecedented access across the country, this is a unique insight into the lives of the 90s orphans now driving the 21st century's fastest growing economy.
This story needs to be told across the world. At a time where there's so much negativity and cynicism, here's proof that a single leap of faith can change the world.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Oval Office that is 1,000 times more volatile and dangerous than his predecessor, because Trump wouldn't be making mistakes like this. He might send out a mean tweet to Rosie O'Donnell, and we don't have that anymore, so I'll bet you can sleep better at night. I'll bet the people of Ukraine are glad that Twitter took away Donald Trump's account. I'll bet you they're really thinking about the election process and how we upended the election of November of 2020 and saw Biden, Mr. Grandpa Joe out of his Wilmington, Delaware basis with the most votes any president in the history of America ever got. Yeah, right. Right.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Period, emotions, truth is timeless. And you guys also have eternal wisdom that we both know comes from the Word of God. And those 5-minute videos from PragerU were so impactful because they were so simple, straight to the point, and so full of facts that is the remedy for leftism, if you will. It's the remedy for being in your feelings. And so there was a couple of videos, but the 5-minute videos were just fantastic for me. They were easy, short, stuff that I could watch and were just amazing.
Did somebody bring those to your attention, or you just discovered it on the internet?
No, just kind of discovered them on the internet.
That's fascinating. That's great.
Yeah.
Social media.
Yes.
Do you have? I often ask this of Prager Force members. Do you have a favorite video? And I don't. You may not, and I don't care what it is if you do. But I'm curious.
I do. It's the 5-minute video about the separation of church and state. I love that because he just goes into all the history of it, how there's not in the Constitution. I actually have a show, it's called Church and State, where my desire is to bring faith and politics together, kind of like Jack Hibbs or Rob McCoy. I want the church, I want people who have not been engaged in this kind of arena before to see that there's really no difference, that everything is sacred, kind of like the Jewish mind.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Fiance? No, I can't be your fiance.
You're gonna go. You're gonna be my fiance, and you're gonna be the most amazing, fascinating, most successful man ever. We're only gonna be there for a few hours, eat dinner, and I promise we'll have the best breakup of all time.
My baby, my princess. Oh, yeah.
Beat a little bit. Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Stressed? But now she's got this to deal with because that's the point. It's how cruel they are. That's how vicious and mean-spirited and cruel the Adam Kinzingers and the Liz Cheneys and the Bob Woodwards of the world are. They're a vicious, vicious bunch. Let me give you another example in reminding you of why you're on the right side during these extraordinary times. I don't know who Dana Gould is. Never heard of him. He's got a podcast of some kind, and he's a comic. But he sent out a tweet that went viral for all the wrong reasons. His tweet said, and I quote, "Thinking about Rush Limbaugh and how now that he's dead, you never, ever hear about him. No one
on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. The Hillsdale Dialogue is underway. Last radio hour of the week. I'll be back next Friday live with Dr. Arnn as we begin Cicero. I'll be back in the States. I am abroad, and we taped this early. It's the last segment of our 3 segments on Aristotle and friendship. All of the Hillsdale Dialogues are available at hillsdale.edu. They're available at hughforhillsdale.com. They're available at iTunes. Just type in iTunes and Hillsdale Dialogue, and that's actually the easiest because they've got better captions than either of us do. They're better at it for whatever reason over at Apple. Dr. Arnn, let's just give you the floor to set up what we are looking for and how it comes about, this highest form of friendship, and why we should treasure it and hunt for it and preserve it once we get to it.
Okay, we should start with the prerequisites. Friendship is the 4th thing raised in the ethics. It's the 3rd thing of 4 raised in the ethics that says it requires the possession of all the other virtues. And what does that mean? That means that to be a friend of the highest kind, you have to be brave and moderate and just and wise, at least in practical wisdom. But the highest friendship even goes beyond that. And so you have to have all those qualities, so that you are in your soul. A great way to translate the words that Aristotle uses is your active condition. That is to say, the condition of you to which you have committed yourself, and that radiates all the time from you, and that you never surrender it. Another word for that is character.
Oh, I loved your teaching of character to these students about the genesis of the term.
Yeah, you see, that's human freedom is explained in character, because he says, even if, you grow up bad. You've got terrible influences. You get no learning. You know, live in a doghouse. It's also true that you will grow up to make choices, and because you have this gift of reason, which is what permits us to talk, but also permits us to see the good, and the good is present in everything that has being, right? And that's not too hard to understand. Just look at anything on the desk in front of you, right? And imagine it crushed and torn up. It loses the being of the thing that it was as it loses the good of the thing it was. And that's how we're able to use common nouns. And so we have that sense in us, and it actually is what makes us what we are and different from the beast. Well, that sense is always with you. And yet, on the other hand, a million other things are with you, too. If you grow up scrabbling for food and hungry, you might be really quick to steal, and it might not even be wrong to do that. But still, it's true that you can see things and understand things and see them for what they are. And that means this sense of the good is always talking to you. You would have to be simply insane to think that it's the same thing to kill a pig as it is to kill a human. And nobody, almost never is anybody so insane. So you have this sense of the good talking to you alongside what you want or think you need. And the question is, do you listen to this sense of the good? You don't do it purely because you need things, and you really do need them. But does it always have a prior place? And every time you make a choice, giving it that prior place, the action is it makes a mark on the soul. That's only a metaphor, by the way, because the soul in Aristotle is immaterial. You can't make a mark on it. But it is etching or engraving. The word character comes from karesan, which means to etch or engrave. You make a mark. And if you make enough of them, and you make them deep enough, you will develop a constant character. And that character is actually through the operation of exercising the virtues in daily life. And it's only somebody who gets a strong character who can be relied upon as a friend.
And then the operation of that friendship is to what end to that character?
Well, you see, the other thing is this, in Aristotle, the identification of the human being starts with the phenomenon of speech, which is the same thing as reason. The word for speech and reason in Greek are the same word, logos. And so just, these things are going on in you, and your rationality, it lets you step back from the immediate things in front of you and see what kind of things they are. And that lets you make judgments about their priority and good and bad, right? So that's the faculty. That's what goes on in us. That's different from what goes on in a dog. Now, because whatever you can think, you can say, it means that you can share this human operation inside the soul perfectly, as a matter of fact. You can explain. You can talk, right? And that means we are made to be together more than any other creatures, more, Aristotle says, than horses or bees. And so that means everything we do, right? It's the reason we get together and make laws. But then the highest kind of friendship takes all of that, and very high things are done better together. Soldiers are braver together if they're both brave, right? And workmen work more happily together and can be more diligent together, right? Everything is like that. But in the case of this understanding, which is, come to find out, understanding is both automatic and difficult. And it takes energy, by the way. That's why the people who say, we can learn by plugging something into our ears or brains at night they just don't know, I debated a guy one time. I said, how long did it take you to write this speech? He made a speech arguing that. And he said, it took a couple of hours. I said, were you tired when you were finished?
That's like stepping on a rake. Oh, that's like stepping on a rake. I would not do that debate with Dr. Larry Arnn. No, that's a rake. And some of your kids stepped on the rake, by the way, in the class. I love it when they did that. But then again, they realized the rake had hit them, and they backed up, and they recalibrated, and they moved forward.
That's friendship, too, by the way.
Yes.
Because in a class, honor is present. Honor, by the way, is a good and a lower good and an ambivalent good. And it is for all of us. We think about it for a minute. But the point is, you don't want that to be the operating thing. You want to be able to laugh at each other. And that makes a bond, by the way. So somebody...
You know what else? I got a comment on this, Dr. Arnn, is that I don't know about the editing because I didn't see the raw stuff, but it occasionally sounds and looks like someone is throwing themselves in front of you to preserve their friend. Oh, God, Arnn's got him down on the map. I'm just going to throw a digression in here to get him off of my friend. And that happens in law school, but it really happened in that room a couple of times.
Well, and see, that's all, with young people. Young people are just intense versions of old people.
Yes,
and
much more energy.
Yeah, and you can, one of my working hypotheses is, proved many times, is if they think you love them, you can do anything with them.
Yeah.
Right? But, by the way, if they think you're using them, you can't even do them a favor without making them mad. And so yeah, in class, one of my favorite things to do is somebody will say something, and I'll say, wait, is that stupid?
That is, by the way, bracing and wonderful. I can't do that in law school because with 75 people, I have no way to get back to it's okay to be stupid. That's the line, right? That's the response. Yeah. It's okay to be stupid, but just know that it was stupid.
Yeah, Professor Newman, a great teacher of mine, a really great teacher of mine, also a professed nihilist. He began every class in his introduction to the class by saying that pride in the classics is a virtue, but it's not an intellectual virtue. And so you don't let pride get in the way of asking dumb questions. And that's, that because it has to be like that.
I have a caution before we go to break. I went to a rodeo once and interviewed everyone at the rodeo, and the world's greatest bucking bronco or bucking cow rider was there. They come out of the chute on a cow. And I said, and he's won the most medals, and he's number one cow rider in the world. And I said, I have a dumb question. He said, there are no dumb questions. And I said to this greatest cow rider ever, is it harder to ride brown cows or black cows? And he paused and said, that's a really dumb question. So it goes to prove that there are dumb questions. Don't go anywhere. I have a smart question to ask Dr. Arnn in the last segment on Aristotle's friendship about his friends. Stay with us.
I do want to remind you about the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. We are aiding them in getting Ukrainian Jews to Israel. Thousands have fled. 170 are on a plane yesterday, if I've got my calendar right in front of me. Yael Eckstein is here to tell you a little bit about what they're taking in. She is targeting what they are taking from Israel on planes to the refugees, and then every plane that goes in comes back with 170 new Israelis. If you head over to HughHewitt.com at the very top, you can literally save a life with a contribution to the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Here's Yael.
People even more desperate for food, even more desperate for water, even more desperate for evacuation. So we've started an emergency fund which goes to those exact needs: evacuation, food, medicine, water, and aliyah. It gives us the ability to see in real time where the need is right now in order to help.
IFCJ needs your help. You've been helping all week long. I appreciate it. The news out of Ukraine continues to be grim in the east, celebratory in the north, but the devastation in the country is such that many people just don't have a home to go to. If they're Jewish, they can go to Israel. They are going to Israel. They are making aliyah, as you heard Yael said. So please be generous. Over to HughHewitt.com, the International Fellowship of Christian Jews banner is at the top. Don't forget as well, ReliefFactor.com, along with Hillsdale College. Relief Factor is just a great sponsor of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Now, I don't think they've been here the 9 years that Dr. Arnn and I have been talking about everything under the sun, all of which are collected at HughForHillsdale.com. But Relief Factor has been here for a long time. I take it every morning. I took it this morning. Whether you have yet to become a ReliefFactor.com user, or you are a user like I have been for many, many years on a daily basis, tell people about it. All right, just don't keep it a secret. Tell people that there are natural anti-inflammatories which are far superior to that which you can buy over the counter, and they've got much less bad impacts on your body and all the good impacts of Vicarian and curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. Don't go into the GNC and start throwing bottles in the shopping cart. No, just get ReliefFactor.com. They've done all the science. They've done all the work. They know the right ingredients. They know how to manufacture it perfectly, purely, and get it to your house. ReliefFactor.com. Come right back. More for the Hillsdale Dialogue after this. Stay tuned.
Curious about what you're missing in the universe? The After Show? 21 years of Hugh Hewitt shows on demand? Go to www.huniverse.com right now, where it's only 99 cents to join for the first month. www.huniverse.com.
Public education has gone off the rails. Parents and teachers who have had enough are now part of a groundbreaking new documentary. Whose children are they? Today on SalemNow.com. Go to SalemNow.com today.
The Hugh Hewitt Show is now available on TV. Go to SalemNewsChannel.com or download the app. You can also watch on Roku and Fire Stick. Salem News Channel, the antidote to the mainstream media. Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews.
If I were to pick the most consequential conservative of the modern era, it would be Roger Ailes.
So is he the pit bull of American politics?
When Roger Ailes is on your team, you win.
Go to SalemNow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
These are clowns who are desperate to prop Joe Biden up. And every last one of the rhinos who did it, the never-Trumpers and the Jen Rubins of the world, they're just flailing, pitiful people who bet on the wrong horse. They're on the wrong side of history, and they are certainly wrong for trying to elevate this guy beyond what he is, which is a blundering, doddering, incompetent old man who should not be in the Oval Office. And that's what we're up against right now. We have a chance to fix these things, and it starts on November the 8th. Beware of rhinos who are propping up either Democrats or fellow rhinos.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
When you look at what SpaceX has done with their reusable rockets, we are seeing science fiction of the 1950s coming to life. Rockets land as they always were meant to do.
It's really trying to land on a postage stamp.
Elon Musk is a visionary, someone who comes along perhaps once a century. It's one thing to run a company that's worth $1 billion. Elon Musk has 4.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to SalemNow.com.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to SalemNow.com.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
They're racist, racist, racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store. Streaming on Salem Now.
Fiance? No, I can't be your fiance.
You're gonna go. You're gonna be my fiance, and you're gonna be the most amazing, fascinating, most successful man ever. We're only gonna be there for a few hours, eat dinner, and I promise we'll have the best breakup of all time.
My baby, my princess. Oh, yeah.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Dr. Larry Arnn is my guest. Hillsdale Dialogue underway. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. This course I've referenced many times, Aristotle's Ethics, available at hillsdale.edu. Absolutely free. It's marvelous. It's really marvelous. It's not up there with the courses that they've taught on the founding, but it will be when people realize how magnificent it is, and it will be stolen by every high school teacher who wants to teach himself or herself how to teach. Dr. Arnn, in the course of that, you mentioned your friend, a friend indeed at Hillsdale, who spoke with you as you were considering whether or not to take the job. And you referenced, I've got 7 or 8 friends. He's one of them. He's still my friend. He's still there. And I am curious, have you lost good friends because of politics? We're going to Cicero next week, and he talks about that unfortunate situation. So you had 7 or 8 great ones. Have you lost any along the way?
No. No, I haven't. I mean, you have to remember that my life is not, if you're in politics, did we talk about John Adams and Thomas Jefferson?
We have not.
Well, they were very close friends, right? And at the beginning of the American Revolution, John Adams he helped maneuver Thomas Jefferson into being the author of the Declaration of Independence because he saw his excellence and because he was from Virginia, and Massachusetts was the scene of action in the struggles with the British, and they needed to get help from Virginia. Well, they became very close friends, and they were alike in a lot of ways, classically educated, erudite.
Very smart, very smart.
Yeah. And then they fell to fighting for 20 years, right? And then the end of his life, John Adams is sitting around with his friends in Brainerd, outside Boston, where he was born and lived and died. And he said, a friend said, "I'm so glad that you and Jefferson are not enemies anymore." And Adams replied, "Enemies? Mr. Jefferson and I have never been enemies. It's just that he wanted to be president, and I was in the way." So you see, Aristotle even says that can happen, right?
Yes.
In public action. Well, I have not lived a life of public action, and so I don't have as much opportunity for conflict, I guess.
Well, now that's an interesting description of your career, with which I think many observers might argue a bit, that public action need not be on the public stage, but there's certainly been conflict involved. You run a college, after all, and you sit on founding. I always say, the most important conservative nobody knows about who isn't in the conservative movement. And there's friction there, isn't there? There has to be friction there.
Yeah. There's, of course, always. And there's not a lot these days. There's some. But in the beginning, there was huge friction. It was a war, because I'm new, and I wanted to, and, the old guy had been very powerful, and he left in a scandal. And so his enemies felt stronger, and his friends felt embarrassed. And how am I going to change the college, right? And, I fancy that I have changed it.
Yes.
And I meant to, although how? I said right from the start, I said, I don't know anything. I don't know nearly as much as you all know about my predecessor. And one of my favorite things to say was, I don't know what he did, but it's not going to happen again. But
that's a great way to dismiss the subject and also provide reassurance.
Yeah, and then
but you still got to break some glass and pull a few alarms.
That's right. And see, I thought, you can't win. See, this is very latent in the whole discussion of friendship. It's not about each other, right? It's about something you both love. And so I thought that the way to be the head of anything, and I did learn this from Winston Churchill and Aristotle, who take exactly the same view of it, is that what you do when you take over any institution, colleges are the worst, is if you want to be inclusive and you want to rope everybody in to what you want to do, you have a mission writing exercise. And then everybody's supposed to feel invested because we all got to comment on the mission. And I think that's just silly. I don't want people to
you
think
and
that.
David Mamet, denier of the word stakeholder as having any relevance to anything ever.
That's right. It's just, what was it? The great Mark Tapscott, who was the editor of the Washington Examiner, used to have a style sheet he would send to authors. And it said, we do not use the word stakeholders, use words that mean the same thing. Toad eaters, risk seekers.
Okay, we're going to come back around under the guise of Cicero. We will complete the conversation next week. Dr. Larry Arnn is the president of Hillsdale College. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. Don't sleep on it, you seniors and you juniors. Go get your application to what may be the last college in America. I'll be back, America. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Generalissimo. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Stay tuned.
Curious about what you're missing in the Huniverse? The After Show? 21 years of Hugh Hewitt shows on demand? Go to www.huniverse.com right now, where it's only 99 cents to join for the first month. www.huniverse.com.
Public education has gone off the rails. Parents and teachers who have had enough are now part of a groundbreaking new documentary, Whose Children Are They? Today on SalemNow.com. Go to SalemNow.com today.